public board meeting of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. If you have not yet done so, please mute your phone. Anyone who does not mute their phone may be muted by the call moderator or removed from the call. Additionally, if you are not a board member or the CEO and her staff, please turn your video off. I will now read a roll call of the board to identify who is on the call. Please identify yourself first before speaking for the record. I will go through this same roll call for each vote. Commissioner Brooks? Commissioner Chinya?
Present.
Commissioner Coy?
Here.
Commissioner Griffin? Commissioner Katz-Zogby?
Present.
Commissioner McFadden?
Here.
Commissioner Reed? Commissioner Roberts?
Present.
Commissioner Sally?
Present.
And I am here. That makes us 7 present with 3 absent. Is there a motion to reopen the meeting?
So move, McFadden.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Is there a second?
Second, Sally. Oh, second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you, Commissioner Sally. All in favor? Commissioner Chinya?
Yes.
Commissioner Coy?
Yes.
Commissioner Katz-Zogby?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Sally?
Yes.
And I am in favor. That motion passes with 7 in favor and 3 absent. Is there a motion to approve the prior open session minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Is there a second?
Second, Coy.
Thank you, Commissioner Coy. All in favor? Commissioner Chinya?
Yes.
Commissioner Coy?
Yes.
Commissioner Katz-Zogby?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Sally?
Yes.
And I'm in favor. That motion passes with 7 in favor and 3 absent. Is there a motion to approve the closed session summaries?
So moved, Robert.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Is there a second?
Second, Chinya.
Thank you, Commissioner Chinya. All in favor? Commissioner Chinya?
Yes.
Commissioner Coy?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Sally?
Yes.
And I am in favor. That motion passes with 6 in favor and 3 absent. I want to welcome everybody. Happy New Year. Good evening. The new year brings a bright future for the district. In 2022, we sowed seeds of dedication, hard work, and commitment into our students and staff. I am eager to see the fruits of this labor. I am particularly excited to hear the comprehensive 3R update from the team tonight. These are always very thoroughly done and really do inform us on all of the incredible work happening within the district. Beginning tonight, I am happy to announce that we will transition back to a hybrid public board meeting. During that time, the public board meeting will remain virtual for those who choose to attend online. However, the public will now have an opportunity to give in-person public comments at the North Avenue headquarters. Before closing my comments, I want to address a serious matter. As you all may or may not be aware, there have been devastating incidents involving students from several of our city schools. On behalf of the board, I would like to express our deepest condolences to the families, friends, and communities affected by these incidents. Our hearts and thoughts remain with all of you as we work together to cope with this situation. Thank you for your continued support of our school system. We will now have the Associated Student Congress for Baltimore City introduce their new executive board. Is Ethan online?
I am. Hello.
Hello. I will turn it over to you, Ethan.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm not sure who from my team is here today, but my name's Ethan. I'm the president of ASCBC for this year, and I'm a junior at Poly. And I guess I'll just let everyone else from our team introduce themselves if they're on the call tonight.
Hello, my name is Yasmin Blanchard, and I'm the Vice President of the ASCBC.
Hello, my name is Fernando, and I represent Latino.
Hi, my name is
Hello,
Shamir,
everyone.
and I'm an ad hoc member of the ASCBC.
Hi, my
Hello,
name is
everyone.
Edward
My name is-
Roberts, and I'm the LGBTQ.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Burnett. I'm the Secretary of ASCBC.
Hi, my name is Drew Lumpkins, and I am Ed Huck for ASCBC.
Hello, my name is Grant Travis, and I am an ad hoc member of ASCBC.
And I also just wanted to recognize our African American student liaison, Camille Coffey, our treasurer, Seda Urban, who couldn't be here with us tonight, but those are also two new faces on ASCBC with us this year.
Thank you, Ethan. It was a pleasure meeting everyone, and we're looking forward to working with this new team. I want to now acknowledge some of the gifts and donations City Schools has received, and I want to thank our donors and supporters for your generous support. I'd like to acknowledge an anonymous donation of $2,500 for food pantry supplies and food items to support students and families for Thanksgiving at Lakeland Elementary Middle School. I'd also like to acknowledge a monetary donation of $25,000 from the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry for books, media equipment, and educational supplies for STEM high school enrichment programs at Carver Vocational Technical High School. And lastly, I'd like to acknowledge a non-monetary donation worth $20,000 from the Fund for Educational Excellence for promotional apparel items, for example, sweatshirts, to demonstrate appreciation and to celebrate City Schools principals, school-based personnel, and district office staff invited to attend the Heart of the Schools holiday celebration. Select attendees were also awarded raffle prizes as part of the celebration. We did have one of our commissioners go to that celebration, Commissioner Roberts, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you seem to have such a great time there. You want to talk a little bit about it and kind of give your shout outs to the staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the organizers that lifted that very, very, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just really touching to see so many of our school leaders, our district staff leaders under one roof, able to enjoy themselves and have fun and remind themselves of, you know, who they are outside of their leadership positions as they serve the students every day. I do want to give a shout out to everyone that participated in the photo booths and the 360s and dances. And I can't remember the Beyonce TikTok dance that people did, but they were TikToking at the Heart of Schools party. It was great. So thank you to everybody that came out and everybody that was responsible for lifting that event. It was a good time.
Awesome. That is so much fun. Look at those photos. That's great. That's great. Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Is there a motion to approve the personnel and quasi-judicial matters?
So move, Roberts.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Is there a second?
Second, Sally.
Thank you, Commissioner Sally. All in favor? Commissioner Chinya?
Yes.
Commissioner Coy?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Sally?
Yes.
And I am in favor. That motion passes with 6 in favor and 3 absent. I will now turn it over to Dr. Santelises for CEO comments.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. It is great to be here this evening. Happy New Year again. And that the last commentary by Commissioner Roberts was right on point, because I would like to begin this evening by giving a big shout out to Roger Schulman, President and CEO of the Fund for Educational Excellence, Paul Wallman, co-founder of the Heart of the Schools, Kevin Leary, and the entire team at the Heart of the Schools, which is a program of the Fund for Educational Excellence. I also want to convey my personal thanks alongside Commissioner Roberts for once again hosting the Heart of the Schools holiday celebration at M&T Bank Stadium on December 21st to recognize the contribution of our leaders and our staff. The principalship is unquestionably one of the most demanding and rewarding jobs in education. Every year, the fund puts on an absolutely fantastic celebration in honor of our principals to thank them for everything they do on behalf of our schools, students, and families throughout the year. And last month's party was certainly no exception. Everyone had a great time, as you heard. And I will tell you, I talked to numerous principals who really did appreciate this event as much as we did. It's also important, I think, to recognize the fund's year-round support for our schools through a grant program that enables principals to apply for funding for additional resources and school enhancements, such as new technology, field trips, professional development opportunities for school staff, just to name a few. To date, the Heart of the Schools Fund has contributed more than $450,000 to fund 125 principal requested projects in our schools. Finally, every year, Heart of the Schools honors 10 exceptional principals selected from community nominations through the Heart of the School Awards. This May, we are thrilled that we will be hosting the first, they will be hosting, the first in-person Heart of the Schools Awards at the Hippodrome since 2019. The nomination process is open now, and I encourage everyone to vote for their favorite principal at www.heartoftheschool.org/nominations. And I will tell you, one of the highlights of the celebration for me is just getting a chance to see what so many members of the school community say about their school leaders. So we're really excited about that. And without further ado, it's really my pleasure to welcome Roger Schulman, Paul Wallman, and Kevin Leary with our thanks for their partnership on behalf of our schools, students, and families. And they can certainly come forward now in the chat, not necessarily in the chat, sorry, virtually in Teams. There we go. There you go, Roger. I'll turn it over to Roger, Paul, and Kevin.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the shout outs. It is truly a pleasure for us to be able to do these events, to celebrate our school leaders, to celebrate the people inside the schools who do the hard work every day, and to celebrate the people at North Avenue. And we're so glad to be able to do the holiday party on behalf of the entire community of Baltimore, to allow people the opportunity to celebrate and to let loose and just have a great time. So I appreciate the recognition, and on behalf of our entire team, I will say it truly is just a pleasure to be able to do that for all of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you again, Roger, and thank you to the fund, to Paul Wallman, and Kevin Leary, just for all of your work again. We truly appreciate your support of our school leaders. Unfortunately, I must now turn to a much sadder and really tragic series of events. From the night of New Year's Eve until now, we have lost 3 students to gun violence, including an 8-year-old boy from Matthew Henson Elementary, a 17-year-old young woman from Renaissance Academy, and a 16-year-old young man from Edmondson Westside High School. In addition, 4 more Edmondson students and 2 students from Benjamin Franklin High School were wounded by gunfire last week. Now, needless to say, Our hearts go out to these students, their families, schoolmates, and communities. District counselors, emergency response teams, and mental health clinicians are providing both immediate and ongoing support to students and staff at the affected schools. I want really to particularly recognize the staff at Edmondson Westside. While Principal Perry was rightly at home ill, his team sprung into action, and several of them were actually the first responders at the shopping center where the shooting occurred. As a district, we are working hard to protect our school buildings and the students and staff who attend them. I was in the cafeteria with a group of young people, with students at Edmondson Westside last week, and many of them had a sense of wanting to feel safer. They had many ideas themselves, some of which confirmed some of the actions we're taking. But one of the things that was clear in my conversations with them is that this issue of gun violence is complex. The violence in our community is complex in that it's not one single thing that drives it, nor is it one single thing that will solve it. What I do know is this, that our young people, our staff, our community, we all know and need to remind ourselves that as frequent as this violence seems to be, it is not normal. I said that 3 times to young people. I said it to teachers, school staff, and to administrators and central staff. The fact that it is not normal for people to have to live with a constant threat of violence at various points within our community means that we are committed to making sure that we have the supports that we need as a community of Baltimore City Public Schools to heal. We are also committed to working with other agencies to leverage our resources, support, feedback to help inform the multiple factors that often go into violence in our communities. Now, you can feel a lot of things, and I did feel, quite honestly, a lot of things last week. I felt anger, felt empathy, I felt sadness, but I did not feel despair. And by despair, I mean hopelessness. I did not feel as if this was the state of our community, that our young people, schools were going to have to just deal with unaddressed. And so while we know that none of us have all the answers to all of the questions that I faced today from staff, I do know that the solution starts with treating all of our children as our children, and that their well-being is a shared responsibility. Until we do, we will not reach the solutions that we need. In the meantime, I am committed to making sure that we provide the support as a school system and also as leaders. This concludes my remarks for this evening, Madam Chair. Oh, my apology. I forgot this evening's PEP. So my apology. I did not plan to end with the PEP, but thank you, Chief Nielsen, for being ready. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and Dr. Santelises. We have a short PEP report for you this evening. An appointment in the Office of the Chief Academic Officer recommended that Monique Spencer, currently Educational Associate 12-month at the REACH Partnership School, be appointed Educational Specialist 2, transition on the Special Populations Team, effective February 13th, 2023. And in the office of the Chief Human Capital Officer, 2 appointments. 1, Ashley Tournier, currently Talent Manager on the staffing team, be appointed Special Assistant Human Capital Office effective January 1st, 2023. And Sarah Abel, currently Interim Special Assistant Human Capital Office, be appointed Director Human Capital Systems and Strategy effective January 1st, 2023. Congratulations to the PEP appointments, and thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Chief Nielsen. I appreciate that. And I will now turn it over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Santelises. We will now hear an information item on updates to non-discrimination policies, ACA, ACB, JBA, JBB, and JICK, revisions to address changes to state law and federal and state regulations. First reader.
Hi, I'm Josh Sivin. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Baltimore City Schools, and I'm joined here by Katia Stokes from the Wholeness Office. Katia is the Director of Student Wholeness, and this work that we're doing stands up a broader team, but Katia and I will start, and I'm going to go through much of the policy revisions, and Katia is then going to start to talk about how it aligns with our current work around bullying and harassment. So sharing our policy slides here. So this may look, this set of policies may look familiar to board members and the public, because we've revised this series of policies a number of times over the past several years to align with strategic priorities, but also because we've had a number of legal changes that have required us to continue to evolve these policies to make sure that they stay and remain aligned with our laws, regulations, and what the state has said. So just here you'll see a number of those, and this continual evolution to make sure that we're supporting our schools and giving them appropriate guidance has been challenging, but we've also managed to make sure that we've made a lot of improvements and enhancements that hopefully streamline the experience for our schools. So just an overview, there are a number of policies, and we want to align and revise them all at once to make sure that they do stay aligned, and also importantly to make sure that we're looking at them all together so that the standards here are as consistent as possible. So there are a number of policies dealing with student-related non-discrimination and bullying. There are a number of policies dealing with staff-related non-discrimination and bullying, and there are different standards, but we want to align those as much as possible too and streamline reporting. And then in addition, there are a number that deal specifically with sex-based discrimination and harassment, and also policies and regulations that deal with pregnant and parenting students and employees. So we grouped this presentation into a number of key considerations. So the first is continued alignment with proposed changes to federal Title IX regulations. As many of you will recall, Title IX is the federal law that protects against discrimination based on sex, and that's the language, in educational programs. And in bringing us up to the federal level, just for 1 second, there are significant changes being proposed by the Biden administration, following up on changes that the Trump administration made to these policies and to the federal regulations. There was a public comment period at the federal level that ended in September, and there were over 235,000 comments. We wanted to not wait for the end of that process so that we would be able to give good guidance and updates to schools, and most importantly, to ensure that our students are protected from all forms of discrimination, including sexual harassment and sex-based discrimination. So this is just an overview. The Obama administration promulgated guidance that really lowered the standard for sexual harassment, made it more able for victims to come forward, and also simplified the process. The Trump administration put in place a higher standard. So in order to establish harassment based on sex, the behavior had to be severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. And it had a complex and detailed process. And the Biden administration is returning to the lower standard or proposing returning to the lower standard of the Obama administration, simplifying the process, and also expanding the procedures to apply to all sex-based discrimination. So you see that federal changes in administration really affect our lives and the experiences in Baltimore City. So the next slides, a number of the changes that we're anticipating in the new regulations are aligned with where our regulations are. And you can see some in terms of we broadly prohibit all forms of sex discrimination and require prompt and effective action. And then there are a number of changes that will require updates to the policy and regulation. And that's what we've started to do, really hoping to get a jump start so that we have these in place and are able to put them in effect when they go into effect. And here, I'm not going to read through all of them, but just at the bottom, you'll see that standard revision that is coming into place where under the new regulations, we're going to a standard that says that sex-based harassment is broadened to include any unwelcome sex-based conduct that is sufficiently severe or pervasive and must be evaluated subjectively and objectively, and that denies or limits a person's ability to participate in educational experiences. So that's a broader definition. There are also additional broader definitions on parenting status and protection of discrimination, expanded role for the Title IX coordinator who sits in the Department of Fair Practices in my office. And then a standard for investigations that actually allows for a reasonably prompt timeline on a case-by-case basis rather than a more rigid process that we actually have in our policies and regulations right now in alignment with the current federal regulations. So that's what's happening at the federal level. In addition, there's a new Maryland law on employee harassment and sexual harassment, which we're also addressing. That standard we want to make sure is incorporated into these provisions, and that has a definition particularly that applies to harassment, including sexual harassment. And just so we've gone to that severe or pervasive, interestingly, the Maryland law says for employees that the conduct need not be severe or pervasive. So they're going to an even more open standard for victims and complainants who come forward. Because our current board policy tracks federal law, it says severe and pervasive, so we're changing that. And that's consistent with the Title IX regulations that are proposed. Also, interestingly, the Maryland state law on bullying that we also want to allow for students doesn't have this severe or pervasive distinction. So again, lots of legal nuances to put, but the end is that we want to make sure all of these align as much as possible. So then, and this really happened stripped from the headlines between policy committee and first reader as part of that big federal omnibus funding bill enacted in December. There were additional provisions around pregnant workers and parenting workers, particularly around lactation accommodations. So we're making sure while we have the policy and regulation open that we address these as well. The new provisions are largely in alignment with existing board policies. So that's a good point that we're anticipating that, in part because Baltimore City has an important and path-breaking ordinance around these issues. Then the next consideration is around updated MSD guidance on LGBTQ+ support. So consistent with federal law, the board put in place really fundamental and significant board policy JBB, which supports students' participation in their school environment consistent with their gender identity and expression. Also recognizes students' rights to be referred to by their chosen name and pronouns that correspond with their gender identity. And in April 2022, MSD updated their guidance on what records you need for a student to change a name or gender. They broadened the range of official documents that can be used to support a legal name change, and also said self-identification by students is sufficient for a gender change, which is a shift from MSDE's prior guidance, which is reflected in our policy, which required an amended birth certificate or a physician statement. Now we're interpreting this all and we'll align it with our MSD's updates with our board policies around parental notification. And so just aligning that self-identification point with the idea that we seek to involve parents in gender identity issues for students, but we also need to check and make sure that because sometimes there are safety concerns at home, that we factor those in as well. So just flagging that. Final consideration, lots of considerations here, is to address areas requiring clarification based on the lessons we've learned through our implementation, as well as aligning with our ongoing initiatives. And just, I won't go into detail, but there are some pieces here about making sure our protocols all work, our timeframes work, using the name chosen rather than preferred name for name and gender, which align with best practices and evolving benchmarks nationally. Also clarifying that the processes for accommodation apply not only to disability, but also religion and language, pregnancy and parenting, and other reasons not related to disability. And then we've had a number of initiatives where we've learned a lot, cross-office collaboration around streamlining policies, also the LGBTQ support team, cross-functional team, and we'll get into a couple of these in addition with the raising awareness work we're doing, online toolkits for student, that's an error. It should say online toolkits for school leaders, updated website, and streamlined data collection and monitoring. So just to highlight a couple of those, as you all may recall, we have developed a support protocol for LGBTQ+ students based on review of similar protocols and vetted with our cross-functional team and school leaders. And really, this is designed to facilitate discussions with students to ensure that students are safe and supported. It's a roadmap for staff to walk through to ensure that all students feel safe and included in school. Then I want to turn it over briefly to my colleague, Ms. Stokes, to talk about the work we've done to raise awareness around bullying.
Evening, everyone. Thank you. So I want to just acknowledge the robust efforts that we've had thus far this school year. I want to just raise awareness about bullying prevention efforts. I'll just focus on 3 things rather quickly. I will first start in saying that the bullying prevention efforts we really have been emphasizing, we want to make sure that it's clear that it's school-wide, right? And so one of the things that we have been intentional about and purposeful about in our efforts is ensuring that there are consistent opportunities for our young people to be able to formalize connections and relationships with one another. We all know that when we're able to connect with someone and form a relationship with someone, we're able to see commonalities that allows us to be able to see ourselves in others. And so we're able to do that district-wide by our stake in the ground in which we're having all schools invest in advisory and morning meeting. So in all our schools and advisory and morning meeting, students not only have an opportunity to connect with one another, but it's also an opportunity for them to go deeper into some of the SEL skills. So being able to do some conflict resolution, being able to discuss, formulate in circles, have conversations, share their feelings. But it's a great opportunity there to begin to teach some of those proactive skills. The second thing that I will share is that, as you can see here on our slide, we had a robust effort this year to make sure that everyone was aware of how to report bullying. We heard everyone loud and clear last year that we want that our young people wanted to have a more clearer process or understanding of how to report what it is they see or may potentially experience. And so at the start of this school year, we made sure that every one of our schools, as well as some of our community organizations, received the posters that you see here on the slide, and that they also received some of the one-pagers. We have been able to see that it has been in full use as people are starting to use the QR code and really reaching out to make sure that they are really sharing what it is that they are seeing. The third thing that I will share that has been an improvement or a growth area for us this year is that we actually employed a bullying prevention and awareness specialist. So Mr. Perkins has been working diligently so far this school year on making sure that our schools and our bullying liaisons in our schools are prepared with information, resources, and toolkits in order to be able to raise awareness about how to recognize bullying, how to differentiate bullying from conflict, and then to make sure that our liaisons in the schools feel supported with additional resources. We also, this school year, was able to have a more robust effort around our Bullying Prevention and Awareness Week. As you can see here on the screen, we had a full week full of activities where in our advisory and morning meeting, we were able to provide schools with lessons and resources around how to recognize bullying, how to report bullying, and in the instance in which we see, how to be an upstander in our communities. And by being an upstander, we're speaking about how it is that we are talking about and bringing forth the environment that it is that we want to see in our schools. And so as you can see here on the slide, we had Unity Day where everyone was able to wear orange. We had an opportunity to go to a couple of schools where they had assemblies. So we have definitely started off the year rather strong.
Thanks, Katia. And I think that's important context, informing that our work in policy is often also tied into practice and also the important collaboration among offices. So just quickly rounding up, we've already done a lot of enhanced training over the past 2 years. And once these regulatory changes are complete, we are in the process of rolling out mandatory online modules for all staff. Based on these, you'll see the topics here of the online modules that are going to be part of a updated and refreshed non-discrimination training, both equal opportunity employment, student bullying and harassment, and then 2 topics that we often get a lot of questions on, LGBTQ support and respecting religious diversity, will be the initial suite of non-discrimination that all staff will receive. Also, just a reminder about several other things. We've developed an online toolkit for school leaders with boiling down these policies and regulations into 2 pages for quick response, and also templates for the various letters for parents that are part of this process. And then we've updated our websites to make sure that clear and accessible are the bullying reporting forms and other information. And then, so those are the pieces. Here's briefly an overview of stakeholder engagement. We have a number of feedback sessions scheduled with our key constituencies. And then we've sent out requests for feedback from a number of other groups as well, including student groups involved there. So that is our presentation. And I know we covered a lot, but wanted to get it all out there to frame up our work here.
Thank you, Chief Sivens. I want to ask my fellow board commissioners, do you all have any questions? Commissioner Coy?
Not so much a question, just on that last slide where you had the different groups. Glad to see those meetings and the opportunity to have those listening sessions. I feel like that's obviously important given the nature of the topic. So thank you for spending that time organizing that and presenting that you all are working on that. There's a lot here. So thank you for the work that you're putting into it and listening to community and those groups.
And I feel like we've also got a lot of, and I wanted to stress that, experience with our staff, ranging from school leaders to counselors to IEP chairs, about how they experience and have worked with this. So that's also really informed our practice. So I think that just that group is important for the feedback here, but we have a broader feedback as we do this work and hear feedback, ongoing, just-in-time feedback.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Coy. Commissioner Katz-Zogby?
Yeah. Sorry. My one question was, I was really happy to see the attention paid to the problems of trans students in Baltimore City Public Schools. I was wondering if you could at least touch on, in some more detail, the recourses that trans students might have and gender nonconforming students, if they are not being referred to by their chosen name and gender by school officials and teachers.
Great question, and I think it's an important piece. I think that it's part of, first of all, we want to have robust compliance, but I think a really important paradigm that's come out of our cross-functional team is that we are supporting students and hopefully put the supports in place so students don't have to experience any discrimination based on their gender identity. So that support protocol that a lot of our schools have used with students to support students helps set the parameters at the outset to support students and to understand their chosen pronouns, their chosen identity. We've had complaints filed where students have said that other students have persistently misgendered them, and we've dealt with them as discrimination claims. We've also dealt with claims around staff, and if a student's in that situation, they can go to any staff member to report that, or they can fill out either a bullying form or a discrimination form that are available online on our website. They should be available in every school office, and we're making sure that those are out there so students can, if they want to make an official complaint, follow up in that way.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Yeah, it's good to know that these sorts of structures are in place and that we're also thinking about like prevention rather than punishment for people who might not be as familiar with the issues that are being addressed by this provision.
And I'll also add that training is key there as well too. So that's part of the work we've been doing first with school leaders, with social workers, with IEP chairs, and then broadening that out to those all staff modules that I mentioned.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you, Chief Sivens, to you and the team.
Thank you, and thanks to Ms. Stokes for coming in with the key work that we're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will now review the consent agenda. Board colleagues, please let me know if you would like an item removed, and please state your question for staff. I will be pulling item 8.01, Legislative Platform 2023, for presentation and vote. I will be pulling also 8.05, Gifts and Donations Approval, so that our student commissioner can also vote on this item. 8.02, FY23 Q1 Board Budget Amendments. 8.03, FY 2023 Supplemental Appropriations for Weapons Detection System Project Pilot Program. 8.04, FY 23 Supplemental Appropriation for the Capital Projects Fund funded by additional rebates. 12.01, Reconstruction US. 12.02, Power School Group, LLC. 12.03, NCS Pearson, Inc.
I'd like to pull both that and 12.04.
Okay, which two?
12.03 and 12.04. My question is related to both of them. I'd love for the staff to lift up how these investments will contribute to the district's ability to meet the new and additional requirements related to the blueprint, Maryland's blueprint for education, and the apprenticeship certification. So it's less of a concern about the specifics being proposed here and more wanting to just underscore the work that's going towards preparing for Kerwin.
Okay. Thank you. I hope the staff got that. I want to be clear. You said 12.03 and 12.04.
Yep.
Okay.
Pearson and Project Lead the Way.
Okay. Thank you. 15.01, Nichols Contracting. 15.02, Colossal Contractors. 15.03, Janus Contractors. And 15.04, Motor Coach Bus Transportation Services. Okay, thank you all. We will now move into public comment. Speakers from recognized groups will have the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. First, we have Diamond Brown, the president of Baltimore Teachers Union.
Good evening. On January 18, 2023, BTU and the School Board Commissioners of BCPSS will go to an impasse mediation hearing. For those listening in that may not know, impasse is when a union and a public school employer cannot come to an agreement for a new contract. The primary reason BTU and the BCPSS School Board cannot come to an agreement for a new contract is because we do not agree on the raise and bonus that our PSRP should get. BTU has proposed to the board and insists that PSRPs get a 6% raise or a lump sum raise to base salary of $3,000, whichever is greater. a 6% increase to longevity, and a $1,500 bonus each year of the 2-year contract. The BCPSS school board rejected BTU's last best final offer and insultingly counter-proposed that PSRPs only get a 2.25% raise or a lump sum raise to base salary of $900, whichever is greater, a 2.25% increase to longevity, and a $1,000 bonus each year of the 2-year contract. BTU maintains its position that the BCPSS school board's proposal of a 2.25% raise and a $1,000 bonus is insulting and misaligned with raises other school districts in Maryland gave their employees, astronomically increased inflation rates, and the clear overwhelming dependency city schools has on PSRPs for our district to function. While our school board is offering a 2.25% raise, Anne Arundel County Schools employees are getting a 4% raise plus 1 step. Harford County Schools employees are getting a 7% raise in 1 step. Prince George's County employees are getting a 5 to 6% raise with 1 step. Baltimore County employees are getting a 3% raise with 1 to 2 step increases. Inflation rates increased almost 8% from 2021 to 2022, so offering the same raise that you offered last school year will not be impactful in helping people pay for food, gasoline, gas and electric bills, and shelter, all cost of living expenses that people work to pay for. It is understood that employers don't have the obligation of covering inflation increases, but it is also understood and proven that one major way to attract and retain skilled workers is to offer competitive compensation, including bonuses. To stay competitive with employee compensation, inflation-based and performance-based raises should be considered yearly. BCPSS is not offering competitive wages despite being in the middle of a staffing crisis. The BCPSS is understaffed, and the staff that remain to make our district function are overworked. Being overworked, underpaid, and understaffed does not entice employees to stay with city schools. We need our PSRPs to stay because we need enough people in the district to support our students with quality instruction. Our PSRPs make up a large group of people that support our students with quality instruction. Supporting our students with quality instruction is just one critical job our PSRPs have with city schools. PSRPs have many other critical jobs in city schools like processing our paychecks, managing our front offices, and onboarding new employees. In order to get this critical work done, oftentimes PSRPs are graciously working unpaid hours. People working outside of their work hours to complete their job is an indication that there are capacity issues. We can fix capacity issues by hiring more people, and having competitive wages is a great way to attract new employees. Reportedly, constantly working beyond work hours takes people away from valuable family time, leads people to burnout, and causes increased stress. Our PSRPs are sacrificing time with their families and compromising their health to do the critical work that sustains the operations of our school district, but they are underpaid. Continuing to underpay people that do the most critical work in our school system will lead to employees being resentful of city schools. Giving PSRPs only a 2.25% raise will create resentment among our most critical staff members. Resentment will lead to people pulling back on how much they give to city schools. We are in a time where we don't need people to pull back. We need people to step up. We need to pay the people that have been stepping up and that we continue to rely on stepping up what they deserve. Our PSRPs deserve at least a 6% raise, so we hope that when we go to the impasse hearing, the board will agree to giving PSRPs a 6% raise and a $1,500 bonus. Thank you.
Thank you, President Brown. Next, we have Ms. Debbie Dimery, President of the PTA Council of Baltimore City.
Good evening and Happy New Year to all. PTA believes all students deserve the opportunity to take part in the arts both in school and in the community. The arts can positively affect school the entire school culture, especially motivation, attitudes, and attendance, which encourages students to stay in school, succeed in work, and succeed in life. National PTA has a long-standing commitment to arts education. The Reflections program provides opportunities for recognition and access to the arts. Last year, 4 Baltimore City students participated in the competition. 2 of those students from Renaissance Academy High School PTSA received awards at the national level. This year, we hope to keep that momentum going by encouraging more local units to participate, with the theme this year being Show Your Voice. Please join me in congratulating Renaissance Academy High School PTSA once again for winning a National PTA Program grant in the amount of $1,000 for PTA Connected, Take Charge of Your Digital Life. I would like to especially give a shout out to Ms. Deborah Wallace, who has worked tirelessly through all the competitions, all the grant writing with the students at Renaissance Academy. Without her, I don't know where we would be. So I just want to acknowledge her and just let everyone know that she is so valuable, and she is she just contributes to the success of all these students with her attitude and her not quit. She doesn't quit at anything. So I would just like to recognize Ms. Wallace for that. If you are a PTA and would like more assistance or information or resource opportunities, please contact me at ddemery@fspta.org. In closing, the PTA Council of Baltimore City would like to offer our condolences, prayers, and support to the families and school communities who are experiencing the after effects of senseless violence. PTA has been advocating for gun safety and violence laws since 1999, because this is not just a Baltimore City problem. It just seems that way. This is a nationwide issue. It doesn't matter if you are a PTA, PTO, or unaffiliated. We must all work together to change the way our children think. Help them to understand that using a weapon is not the way to solve a problem. It just creates more problems. As Dr. S said earlier, it's not normal, it's not normal, it's not normal, and we need to let them know this is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Demery, and Happy New Year to you as well. Next, we have Carl Perry, President of the Public School Administrators and Supervisors Association.
Greetings, Madam Chair, Vice Chair McFadden, honorable board members, and Dr. Santelises. Typically, I would say Happy New Year, but as you all know, it's not been such for me and my school community. We've suffered a terrible tragedy near our campus to some of our scholars. First, I would like to thank the responsiveness and amazing support of our district offices, and especially my IRLD, Ms. Jackie Hayden. I must commend the dedicated leadership of our Piazza administrative team, as well as they led on my behalf. I commend my entire school community on their resiliency and steadfast commitment to our scholars and continuing the great work on behalf of our scholars. I've been in the seat of a principal for 22 years, and I've witnessed and endured a great deal. Over that time, I estimate that I've lost about 40 of my kids. Please let me clarify. Once you were my child, then you were always my child. That amount of loss takes a tremendous toll on you. The longer a person has been in education, the more they will see for and of their children. The greater the reward and the greater the toll. In 2005, I had the opportunity to be the founding principal of an innovation school, Renaissance Academy, which was modeled after Noble Street Charter High School in Chicago. If you take some time, please look it up. See that Noble Street has their own charter network. Excuse me. An essential feature was the structure and discipline expectations. For instance, students earned merits and demerits. The demerits were for infractions. An example of some of the infractions were for chewing gum, wearing hoop earrings larger than a quarter. I used to walk around and pull out a quarter to check to make sure the earrings weren't larger. Tattoos could not be visible. Shirts had to be tucked in. The use of profanity earned you 4 demerits and automatic detention. You had to wear black or brown belt, black or brown shoes. The belief was to focus on the small things and the larger things will not take place. I mention this to again highlight our code of conduct. The code of conduct does not reflect the current infractions in the way that supports a safe learning environment in many schools. The level of violence is unprecedented, and we have to address it immediately. We must also plan for it in the future. Let's focus more of our attention on the small things and teach our little ones, while we're also teaching accountability to all children. We must begin to truly address the more violent acts which are growing across schools and leading to acts of violence in the community. Almost every homicide victim in Baltimore City attended city schools. I estimate that many of the perpetrators did as well. If someone has gone through school and their behavior has not been truly addressed, then as young adults, they will have learned a sense of lawlessness that the community can no longer handle. I know you've seen people driving their cars in lanes, excuse me, at red lights, and they just simply drive through them. They fear no consequences. That behavior has been learned somewhere and was not adequately addressed. The focus is not on suspensions, and that's not our ask. Our ask is for safety, education, and growth. Our district enrollment will continue to decline until we make our schools safer. W43, that's where I am right now. It destroys a piece of your heart. W43 is the code in Infinite Campus, death of a student. Thank you for your time. Have a good night, and please be safe.
Thank you, President Perry. And it sounds like you're still under the weather, so I want to thank you for showing up tonight and speaking today. Finally, we have Ethan Eblagi, President of Associated Student Congress for Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. My name is Ethan Eblagi, and I'm the president of the Associated Student Congress of Baltimore City. Since our last public board meeting, ASCBC has gotten to break ground on its goals for the school year, convening SGAs citywide in a General Assembly for the first time in a decade, recruiting and supporting SGA advisors and leaders across the district with the aim of bringing student government to every secondary school in Baltimore, and working to bring all kinds of students and organizations from every corner of city schools into the conversation. Last month, I spoke before the board about the dangerous implications of advancing the Evolve contract to a pilot. ASCBC has begun reaching out to students from Mervo, Carver, Excel, and Digital Harbor to make sure students are involved and heard as this unfolds. However, as these important conversations have begun, we have unfortunately heard that school administration in these schools has fallen short in some regard in providing critical context and information to the community, and many of our overtures have been met by confusion from students and teachers. That deficit in communication, however, is not limited to the Evolve contract. Students conveying a lack of information from administration as their schools are asked to endure a test run of controversial weapons detection systems is only a symptom of a broader feeling from students that they're being left out of the loop. At our General Assembly in December, students and SGAs and school organizations that ASCBC talked to were overcome with that feeling. Students at Carver, for instance, told me how their efforts to combat food insecurity and waste amongst the student body were left unheard by the school administration and eventually discontinued, while students from Henderson Hopkins and other elementary middle schools felt unrecognized in school decisions. Baltimore students can, when given the chance, produce no shortage of intuitive solutions to the problems facing city schools. As those firstly impacted by the state of the district, we deserve a voice in the decisions that we face the consequences of in the classroom, and the students I have met in my first 2 months on the job have been doing everything from confronting violence by spearheading revolutionary de-escalation programs to leading restorative justice efforts and making their schools safer and more vibrant places. This untapped potential is nowhere more evident than in our unfortunate lack of student-led organizations. Process for forming student organizations is not standardized by the district, and thus schools with poor communication are responsible for ensuring separate standards. This, in addition with the invariably understaffed nature of the teachers, makes it hard to guide students through forming student-led organizations without promise of compensation or assistance, leaving the tools needed to equip students with the powers to advocate for themselves largely a privilege of schools in the city's wealthier zip codes. In our first week of the new year, 3 city school students were tragically lost to gun violence. Of course, ASCBC extends its most sincere condolences and solidarity to the families and teachers affected. School safety was consistently ranked the top priority by students at our General Assembly, and nearly 80% wrote that ensuring student input is incorporated into school safety decisions at the district level was something they considered, quote, very important. Besides heeding the call for the board to do the hard work of engaging students, there are also a number of unexplored solutions to school safety that, at this moment, merit consideration. Youth as Resources, a student-led organization that has previously asked the board to sit down with them, is a tested hand in training school police officers with students to build trust with community members. While institutional and central to how we make and execute plans in city schools, this neglect is not permanent or unfixable. ASCBC has had the amazing opportunity to work closely with the Policy JJA work group, which will be presenting revisions to that board policy in the near future. They have been welcoming of student input into their work, and we're certainly looking forward to working with them to present the board a comprehensive student-first policy very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers. I want to now turn it over to the board executive for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first public comment is from Corey Witherspoon. Corey, are you available?
Available. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Hi, I'm Corey Witherspoon, Pimlico Elementary Middle School holding specialist. I really sincerely believe in PSRP pay being increased to 6%. When an irate parent came to the school wielding a weapon and wanting to cause harm on staff, it was myself, a PSRP member, that de-escalated her. Risked my own life to protect fellow staff. I'm not an anomaly. Every school has a Mr. Witherspoon that would risk their lives to save both staff and students. There should never be a discussion about pay increase. We are worthy. You all know the stories, and we about us risking our lives for our schools. We are frontline in our schools, and our value cannot be measured but should be compensated. Baltimore City Public Schools PSRP members are vital to Baltimore City Public Schools. We teach in classrooms, we case manage, we are mental health support, mentors, mediators, and group leaders. All know what has happened to the students at Westside Skills Center. My condolences. PSRP members are the people that these young people tell and trust so things will not happen in the school buildings. Our work is admirable. We are paraeducators that help to make sure students get their accommodations and modifications and IEPs. We are multitasking educators that have to teach young people at different educational levels. Our PSRP members are problem solvers, advocators, community leaders, motivators, and testing proctors. Our schools are overcrowded but undermanned, causing our PSRP members to be overwhelmed. We overcome our L's for the love of our students, so we can support our students with the greatest professionalism. You cannot sustain a school without us. Our PSRP staff work out of love because it's needed, but you cannot work for free labor. We work in areas like Park Heights, Druid Hill, and Emerson that's surrounded by darkness. We PSRP members are the light that teach our young people that education is important and that if they really want to change Baltimore, then it starts with education. Our PSRP members teach our young people how to be good Baltimoreans. Our PSRP members make sure people get paid in the school system. In the wake of COVID, our members conducted COVID tracing to ensure safety in schools to prevent a potential breakout. Our PSRP members handle retirement and benefit packages so that all can be compensated and contributing admirably to our school system. Our community school coordinators risk their lives going into dangerous neighborhoods to make sure our young people have the services that they need. Our cafeterias fed our students during the shutdown of schools, regardless of the fears of catching COVID, and would do it again at moment's notice. Our frontline workers, our frontline heroes are unheralded in Baltimore City schools. We must be respected, and respect comes with more than a thank you. You show respect to one by rewarding them financially so they can focus on the work.
Mr. Witherspoon, I'm sorry, Mr. Witherspoon. Can you finish your last thought?
Yes, so they can support the work and support their family. Thank you so much.
I don't know.
Oh, hold on, Mr. Witherspoon. You want to? Sorry, there was some. You want to finish your last thought? There was someone else unmuted.
I have been delegating more at work. I don't. I have been like saying, oh.
Can everyone please mute your phone if you're not signed up for public comment?
I'm not sure, but you show respect to one by rewarding them financially so that they can focus on the work instead of how they are going to pay their bills. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Santelises. Thank you, Brother McFadden. Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Thank you all. Respect. Good night.
Thank you. Next, we have a video from Takia Dingle.
My name is Takia Dingle. I'm the school secretary for Arundel Elementary School in Cherry Hill. My comment tonight will be on the raises for the PSRPs. The 2.25% raise that the district refuses to move up from is inadequate. We are currently seeking a 6% raise, which, although it is still not where we should be, will at a minimum provide some much needed relief to your most grossly underpaid workers. There is no justification that a person working a 40-hour week in the district where we work with some of the most challenging students in familial situations should need to seek a second and third job just so they can afford basic human needs like food, water, electricity, rent, and mortgage. With the rate that cost of living is rising, you should be embarrassed that you have full-time, hardworking employees that are struggling to eat and have roofs over their heads. I'm a single mom who lives so minimally, and after working for the district for almost 12 and a half years, I am struggling. I don't have a fancy cell phone plan, cable, new car, expensive clothes, credit cards.
Christian, we can't hear. The sound has gone off of the video. I'm not sure why.
Okay, I just noticed. Okay, I was unmuted, now I'm muted. Did you all hear? Do I need to start over or did it?
20 seconds ago.
Okay, I want to go back. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right.
Single mom who lives so minimally, and after working for the district for almost 12 and a half years, I am struggling. I don't have a fancy cell phone plan, cable, new car, expensive clothes, credit cards, or other things like that. But I do have student loans. I do have a child in college, a BGE and water bill, a
Sorry about that.
vehicle that I must put gas in to get to work, and insurance that I must maintain on that vehicle. My basic needs exceed what I get monthly, and I'm constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul. I also live daily with the anxiety that one thing can break down and I'm stuck. I am unable to maintain a savings account because there is nothing extra to save. It's very frustrating, and it makes me wonder why I'm doing what I'm doing. It is disheartening and frankly disrespectful that our employer is always talking the talk, saying how much they value us. But when it comes down to it, they won't walk the walk. They give us tired excuses about how many bathroom improvements they must make and how they must improve the heating and air conditioning systems in the schools. And yes, you need to do that too. It should have happened ages ago. But since when is that an either or situation? You know, you can either eat or go to a bathroom that doesn't have a sewage backup. Thanks. You also have asked so much of your PSRPs. You asked us to work in hazardous situations that you yourself would not work in, like the pandemic, and denied us hazardous pay. People were quarantining, and we were asked to be in the buildings to answer phones, to prepare work packets for the students and meals for families, to deliver deliver computers, hotspots, and work packets to students. Even when we had to be home, you wanted us to forward calls to our personal cell phones. You wouldn't even provide us with work phones or work computers when we asked. So all your accolades, it feels very disingenuous to us. Think of the mental health toll that takes on a person trying to survive. This school system continues to get extra monies from the state, and yet the only people who really see reaping the benefits are those in the top tiers of the district who aren't just trying to fulfill their basic needs. When the workers of the system's needs are met, you get a happier and more motivated employee, and in turn, a better product. I'm asking for you to not continue to be a part of our problems, but to be a logical part of the solution.
Hallelujah.
You can't eat or pay bills with your words.
Sorry about the disruption. Give me
We're
one
looking for
moment.
equity. Let's begin with getting our critical part of the solution. We can't eat or pay bills with your words. We're looking for equity. Let's begin with getting our PSRPs, their well-deserved 6% raise. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, bear with me.
My name is Takia Dumont. I'm the school secretary for Arundel Elementary School. And
Sorry about the tech issues. I'm going to just share the last 10 seconds since we got cut off.
the work continue to be a part of our problems, but to be a logical part of the solution. We can't eat or pay bills with your words. We're looking for equity. Let's begin with getting our PSRPs, their well-deserved 6% raises. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Next, we have an email from Latasha Robinson, which I will read. Okay, I get this emails from Latasha Robinson from Leithwalk Elementary School. Dear Commissioners, Happy New Year. I'm a one-on-one special education paraeducator. My reason for writing to you this evening is because not only do I deserve it, but I need a 6% increase instead of 2.25%. Being that I do not make a living wage, I often work after-school programs and a weekend job in an attempt to make ends meet. I'm in a one-bedroom apartment in Baltimore City. Therefore, rent, utilities, food, and so forth are expensive. I know the school system aims to prepare students for college and career so that they can earn a living wage. I graduated from a Baltimore City high school and now work for the school system, yet I cannot pay my rent with one paycheck from my full-time job. I give all I can to not only my one-on-one student, but to all the students in the class as applicable. Lord knows when I need my car repaired, the lengths I go through to be able to get it fixed. I used to be able to go ask my grandma to assist me with the cost, but she has gained her wings. Now I'm depending on you to do what is right. Pay an increase that is worth my labor. In doing so, the district will be taking steps forward in retaining its workers. Sincerely, Latasha Robinson. Next, we have a video from Jocelyn Provident.
My name is Jocelyn Providence, and I'm a high school math teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools. And tonight I would like to talk to you about your legislative agenda and midterms. The main topics that I want to speak about on your legislative agenda that is being presented and discussed today are school board composition and legislative curriculum and testing. I appreciate the fact that the only thing that is listed that the board opposes is, quote, any regulation or law that would diminish the role of the board, end quote. I also appreciate that on the PowerPoint presentation, it says that you all support the, quote, enhanced voting for the student board member with the HB and SB numbers listed next to that. I hope this means that the school board is looking to take a new approach this year compared to last year and will be supporting these bills instead of stalling these bills that have very important attributes that would help to democratize the school board more than it has been in the past. Some of the items that I'm referring to are increased student voting rights, even though students should be able to vote on all issues because, you know, they are the most affected by any policy or decision since they're students. Also creating a task force that would study compensation for all commissioners, as well as what the effect could be of adding an additional student member to the school board. Please support and advocate for this important bill in this year's upcoming session. I also want to express my appreciation for supporting the idea that there should be, quote, local decision-making authority in the development of curriculum and allowing for flexibility in creating innovative and creative curriculum to meet academic standards, end quote. We have some of the most highly qualified and professional teachers in the entire state. And we have seen how successful this approach can be. For example, our Be More Me curriculum. The engagement that both students and teachers have when there's flexible, creative, and innovative curriculum where the teacher plays a role in building and implementing it is incredible and exactly what our teachers and our students deserve. Next, midterms. At the very beginning of the school year, maybe even near the end of the summer, district leadership released guidance and a calendar about important dates and exams for the school year, and schools were supposed to use that and plan accordingly for the entire year. And that included guidance on midterm exam schedules. Last week, the district released an updated guidance about how they wanted midterm exams to look less than 3 instructional days before midterms were originally supposed to start. This brought confusion and disarray to teachers and families who were already informed about the guidance because their school leadership was proactive and supportive in their communication to staff and families. When last-minute changes and guidance is made, especially related to testing and exams, it shows miscommunication and disorganization. And unfortunately, this is not a unique situation. This needs to change. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have a video from Nathan Farrell.
Nathan Farrell, and I am providing public comment around the Maryland State Department of Education Maryland Leads grant opportunity to transform Maryland schools for the future. One of the goals of this opportunity is to launch initiatives to grow the pipelines of teachers and other professional support staff. This includes enabling teaching assistants and paraeducators to become teachers and to develop programs to diversify the teaching corps. City Schools has leveraged this grant for staff support and retention, totaling a little over $550,000 to support teachers pursuing national board certification and to recruit professional learning facilitators to work individually with faculty to develop support plans for teachers. The concern I'm raising today is that City Schools is late to the game on national boards. Baltimore City Schools entered the school year 22-23 with fewer than 50 national board teachers compared to Montgomery County, who has 922. Well before the blueprint, Montgomery County built a comprehensive and well-resourced professional development infrastructure to support teachers through the process, while City Schools routinely denied teachers the opportunity to qualify for the 2/3 application funding previously provided by MSDE. City Schools was a year late in accessing national board funds for teachers and has yet to capitalize and expand the Maryland State Department of Education and Morgan State University Teacher Collaborative grant intended to pilot supports for African American teachers pursuing an NBC. This is an outcome of the poor collaboration and communication with the BTU. The blueprint requires authentic partnerships between the district and the BTU. Currently, communication and collaboration between the union and the district are stalled and unproductive. City Schools has canceled multiple contractually mandated meetings necessary to shift our current career pathway systems to the blueprint and has yet to meaningfully engage with BTU leadership on blueprint areas outside of the career pathways, instead choosing to take feedback from selected groups of staff instead of elected leadership. This is leadership that represents 80% of the employees in this district. Alarmingly, during negotiations over blueprint topics, the district refuses to do more than the statutory minimums established in the law. It is our hope that this board is willing to listen to and work with BTU leadership as the current practices employed by the board and labor relations are failing the employees in this district, our members, and our students. Thank you.
Okay, next we have a video from Tamika Peters from Liberty Elementary.
Board, how are you? My name is Tamika Peters, and I am a PSRP at Liberty Elementary School. Staff Associate is my position. And I would thank you for taking the time to watch my video and to hear me out about the proposed pay increase and stipend given to PSRPs. First, we must say thank you. Thank you for even acknowledging that PSRPs aren't deserving of such a great thing, right? Because in the world we live in the district that we work in, as much as we love it, sometimes PSRPs do feel undervalued. So I want to say thank you first, because you must be thankful for what you receive. Now, on the other hand, I would like to propose that we increase that a little bit, right? I feel like PSRPs are the heartbeat of the school. We cannot go to any schools and not find a PSRP that is not going far and beyond the call of duty. From holding classes, from nurturing children, from being a big part of the whole student, the whole child. PSRPs, all that. Teachers have a lot on their plates. I know, because I started my journey as a long-term substitute teacher. Then I was a PSRP or paraprofessional, as they said. I became a certified teacher, and then just this year, I changed my role back to PSRP staff associate. So I know firsthand how much teachers do and still do. But PSRPs play a valuable part in that as well. So I'm asking for you to just think about and consider a lot when you're thinking about the proposed increase. 6% is really not that much, you know, especially when many PSRPs are not even making a living wage, or they work multiple jobs just to make their ends meet. That 6% will mean a great deal. The stipend of $1,500 would do so much for them. Many PSRPs supply a lot of school supplies as well. I know I do. And that would be a great help. And it would just add more value to what we do and how we do it. So just take a moment and think about that. Just think about the PSRPs that you know, what they do for the school, how they still are here. Many PSRPs have worked numerous years in the district. They don't leave to go anywhere else. They love Baltimore City. They love Baltimore City Public Schools. And more importantly, they love the students, the staff, the families, the community of our great city. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I hope it helps you understand that it's needed and it will be greatly appreciated. Everyone have a blessed rest of the day.
Okay, our final public comment is from Vanilla Lancaster from Leith Walk Elementary. It's an email to be read. Good evening, commissioners. I hope all is well. I'm a paraprofessional in a Title I school. A raise can boost morale, increase employee satisfaction, contribute to daily living, and encourage hard work. Raises are important. We deserve a 6% raise. We exceed expectations. We seek out professional developments. We also produce high quality work. Take the initiative and are responsible and go be above and beyond our duties and are loyal. A 2.2% raise is not enough. Sincerely, Vanilla Lancaster, Leith Walk Elementary. Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Christian. Based on the public comments, are there any additional items any board members would like to pull from consent? Okay. All right. We will now hear the presentation for 8.01 Legislative Platform 2023.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair and Madam CEO and members of the board. I'm Dewana Starrett, the Director of Legislative and Government Affairs for the Baltimore City School Board. Before I start, I also want to acknowledge Melissa Broom, who is the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the school system as well. Together, we are both in Annapolis over the course of the next 90 days, fighting hard for our students. So here I will share my screen. Okay, did that advance?
Yes,
we see it.
Okay, good. Okay, because I was having trouble earlier, so I just wanted to make sure. So what I'd like to start off with, just the development of the platform. As you know, we had our second annual joint legislative town hall with the city delegation on November 2nd at North Avenue. I also want to acknowledge that for the first time this year, I met with Act Now, which is a faith-based community organization, to get their input on priorities for the upcoming session. I meet every Friday with my colleagues. We call ourselves the Green Streeters every Friday, and we talk about strategy and local and state priorities. Also, I did, as you can see, the other members, the other organizations, PTA, PCAB, and last week I met with ASCBC, the Associated Student Congress of Baltimore City. So I wanted to give just a quick legislative overview. So session begins tomorrow, the 11th. And as you can see from the timeline, we have the inauguration of our new governor and lieutenant governor January 18th. And the final date for the incoming governor to introduce his budget bill is January 20th. That's 2 days. So what I pointed that out because my understanding is that there has been some cooperation between the outgoing governor and the incoming governor on the transition and the budget. But as with all transitions, the first budget that the incoming governor has will most likely not have all of his priorities. And it's something that the General Assembly will have to work out throughout the course of the 90 days. And I always remind the board that typically we have over 2,000 pieces of legislation introduced every year, and of those 2,000 or so, over 400 are related to education in some manner. So right here are the list of some of the major issues that I foresee coming up this session, and I will go over each of those in more detail as I go through the presentation. But generally the topics are always our budget and adequacy of funding and in the operating and capital budget, the school board composition, which I will need to get extra vote from our school board members in a little while, in addition to just the overall adoption of the platform, a poverty index, mental health and trauma-informed care, and recruiting and retaining staff. As we know, there's a major staffing shortage. So as I move on, the transition of government, I also wanted to make mention that not only will we have a new governor, Baltimore City, because of a loss of population, will lose one district. We lose District 44, and we have now District 43 has been split into A and B, and we have a city-county district of District 43, and means we only have 2 district delegates in 43 as opposed to the previous 3. We also have the loss of Delegate McIntosh, who was Chair of Appropriations. While that's a great loss, I am confident that the new leadership, Ben Barnes, who represents part of Prince George's County, has a very good relationship with us, and I'm sure that he is very open and willing, and has said he's open and willing to understand and work with us. The state budget has nearly a $2 billion surplus, and I would suggest that there's going to be a lot of people vying for this funding. And I want to urge the board that we seek some of these funds to support a greater capital funding program. The school system typically receives between $28 to $30 million from the state on average, but with the escalation of construction costs, the money just buys much less. And based on hearing a briefing by the Chief of Staff and the CEO, we've seen escalation costs in construction as high as 50% for our major projects and 40% for systemics. And I also learned that of the $420 million that we expected to receive from the Built to Learn legislation, which will allow us to renovate our large high schools, there will be a great reduction in that $420 million because of the bond market. So again, I would request that we use some of this, surplus to fund school construction and also any inflation increases. And in fact, I would urge that maybe we should see if we can get an inflation factor in the capital budget, because the capital budget, believe it or not, does not have an inflation factor. Also, declining enrollment is an area that we have in common with a lot of jurisdictions across the state. To be counted for funding, a student has to be not only present on September 30th, but also be properly immunized. We've had a hold harmless in place for declining enrollment since the beginning of the pandemic. And the requirements for immunization were lessened during this time. But now we find that as we're starting to open up, that some parents and some students have not received all the immunizations, and it's leading to a decrease in our enrollment. So we're going to request, and I think other jurisdictions would like to request for other reasons about declining enrollment, a hold harmless. So here's the other big issue for the school board composition. There are two issues. The first is the issue of when does a board member's term actually begin? And the second issue is when a board member is appointed after the start of the outgoing board member's term, is that considered a full term? So in other words, if a board member's term ends and another board member is not appointed until a year or 2 years later, when did that board member's term begin? And also, will that board member be allowed to be appointed for 2 consecutive terms? Because in Baltimore City, we have 2 full 3-year terms as our term limits for board members. So I asked the board attorney, Roger Thomas, to review the case law and Maryland statutes. And as for the first issue, it's very, very clear that the newly appointed member's term begins at the conclusion of the outgoing member's term, even if the newly appointed member, it holds over for a considerable amount of time. So in our case, if a member's term ended on July 1st, 2020, and the replacement didn't occur until March of 2021, the term really did begin July 1st, 2020. As for the second issue, we know that the current statute allows for board members to serve 2 full 3-year terms. And if a person is not appointed until much later, then when does can this new person come in and serve 2 full 3-year terms and the remainder of the term that he came in late or she came in late? So Mr. Thomas opined that he thought the incoming board member, even though the term was not a full 3 years, that the person could only be appointed to 1 3-year term thereafter. So in his opinion, he believes that even if a board member comes in on a shortened term, that still is considered a full term, and therefore that board member can only be reappointed once. He did say that the law is not really clear. I mean, there's no case law specific to it. So he suggested that we still go forward with an AG's opinion to determine if his understanding is correct. So I would suggest that we do look to an AG's opinion, but only if the board thinks that the AG's opinion is necessary, or if they just want clarity. If the board just wants clarity from the AG, then I think we wait for the AG's opinion, which could probably come a month or two, or maybe after the conclusion of session. But if the board clearly believes that it has a direction in how it wants the board members to proceed, then I think we would need to introduce legislation. So that's when I have to point back to the board to ask the board for some clarity on whether they would like to be neutral and just hear what the AG's opinion is and move forward based on that opinion, or if the board truly wants to modify the language and make it clear and what that clarity would actually mean.
Tawana, you want to hear from some of us tonight, I'm assuming, correct?
Yes, about that one issue before I move forward. I would need to know about the board's decision of if they want to be neutral and hear what the AG's opinion is, or if the board actually wants to make changes to the current legislation to clarify, and what that clarification would be. Would it be to have a board member serve 2 3-year terms, and if a board member comes in midway through another term, they would be able to complete that term and then have 2 more terms as the law allows? So that's the clarity that we would need to get, or there could be some other possible manner in which the board would like to see board members appointed.
So you're saying that the clarity will come
if the AG could have an opinion and tell us this is what he sees the law telling us to do. And if that's all the board wants to hear to understand what they believe the law is, then that's it. We can wait for the AG's opinion. However, if the board already has an idea of how it wants the law to be interpreted, we would then submit legislation of that interpretation.
So personally, there are other commissioners. I'm not sure for me personally. I'm still processing. So Commissioner Coy and then our Chair Emeritus, Chinya.
Yeah, well, thank you, Donna, for the presentation here. And also, I want to just sort of, as a member of the committee, the MABE Legislative Committee, and seeing Commissioner Chinya also in that role until, I guess, imminently, but you know, we've been in conversations with the sort of hearing the legislative preview and whatnot. I just want to thank you, Donna, for all the work that you're doing on this. As it relates to this question of the school board, I do think, as I've looked at what it says and how it's phrased, I do think there's sufficient ambiguity here in what it's saying, because it says that you have 2 3-year terms and that you can serve consecutively. And so I would suggest, I would propose that we seek for legislative clarity around this point, you know, and if there is larger, I guess, bills happening, maybe not a standalone just to address this one thing, but if there is other bills that are advancing, that this would be something we consider providing clarity. And I would say that while you are completing a term, that not count as
a full term.
As a full term, that the defined limits on how long someone can serve are for 2 3-year terms. It would be my sort of proposed thing. And I think this, you know, as I look around the room, this affects a lot of the commissioners in this room. You know, for their personal experience, while these types of changes may take longer to be implemented than for any of us in this room, I do think that it was not contemplated that it would require as long, perhaps, to fill vacancies as it has in practice. And so, you know, when it is an extended, you know, and we're talking like a year after a term starts, Maybe there's some threshold there to the amount of time, but that would be my what I would offer for this for consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Chinia. Chair Emeritus.
Yeah, I'm going to concur with Commissioner Coy. I will just say, because the experience has been different for each of us on the board, I personally completed someone else's term and then served 2 full terms plus. But I believe if we propose a legislation and there is the need for an opinion, we will still get the opinion. So I would move to go ahead and propose the legislation.
Any other commissioners want to weigh in?
Chair Richards. Go ahead, Duana.
I was going to say, is it possible that we could have a commissioner motion and then to have an official vote as to how to proceed? I think what I'm hearing based on the last couple of comments is that we would like to find clarity in the definition of a full term in order to determine when or how long a board member can reside on the board. Because I think it all comes down to the word full term, because the statute says 2 full 3-year terms.
So we're asking for clarity around what a full term is for a school board commissioner and when the term begins.
Well, we know when, I think we're clear when the term actually begins. The term begins, even if you're appointed late, the term still began at the conclusion. But the question is, I think we could put in statute something about a definition of what a full term is. So that way, if you want to say a full term begins 60 days, it can begin up to 60 days after the official appointment because right now the mayor has 60 days to appoint a new member. And so if he appoints so many days after that 60-day threshold, that would not be considered a full term. So we could put something in there that really defines what a full term is.
Yeah, and we know that it can often impact the work of the board when commissioners are appointed, their duration. So you're asking us to consider to add this to our platform?
Yes.
Okay. Chair Richardson.
Yeah, being someone who's been affected by this, I do agree that the language needs to be clear. So you want us, I want to make sure I understand what you want tonight, Duana. You want us to vote right now?
On this one particular, yes, before the full adoption, I need an understanding of how the board would like to proceed with the clarity around the appointments. It's not so much when the term begins, but the definition of what a full term means, so that we know if we can do like what Linda had, where she could go 2 full terms and completed the partial term that was left, or as other board members came in and they came in halfway through someone else's term and then lost those 2 years. Yeah.
So we have Commissioner Coy.
Yeah, and I'm happy to make a motion that we advance as our legislative platform the desired outcome of legislation that defines a full term with a boundary of how long after the start of a term that it could be considered a full term.
Does that do it, Duana?
Yeah, I can work with that, yes.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second, Robert.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Let me get my list. All in favor, Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Chenya,
Yes.
Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
and I am in favor. Student commissioner vote.
I'm not
Does the
sure.
student commissioner vote on this, Christian?
I think the student commissioner could.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz-Zagbi?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That
Commissioner-
motion passes.
Commissioner Reed's in favor.
Oh, Commissioner Reed, happy New Year. Okay, Commissioner Reed, so that motion passes with 8 in favor and 2 absent.
Okay, so I will include that in the final draft of the platform. The other issue where we can discuss actually maybe attaching this, and I will talk with the sponsors. We are supporting the enhanced voting rights for the student board member. As we know, legislation was introduced last year, HB 433 and Senate Bill 157, that increased the student voting rights from allowing the student member to vote on all matters except for personnel and collective bargaining. We support that, as well as the other items within that legislation about the compensation study for board members to study if there should be an additional student board member. So I'm recommending, and I know the board is supportive of this legislation. And the legislation, actually, I just saw it come across that Senate Bill 31 this year is the Senate version of last year's school board bill here. And so I'm going to ask the sponsors of that legislation if we could add an amendment to fix this definition of full term. I think they might be open to that. So we already have a vehicle already in play for this.
So Tawana, this is Commissioner Sally. So one of the things I would ask, I was just processing all of this evening, is thinking about in the event that this bill does not go forward, what then therefore is the alternative to providing the set of clarity that the board seeks on the term definition. So would it be defaulting to the AG opinion to obtain that information that we so seek in this year? Or would this be something we would revisit next year?
Well, my feeling is that the bill will pass, but if it doesn't pass, they can still exclude all of that information related to the student board member and the compensation study, and only maintain the information related to the definition of what a full term is. So that's quite possible.
Got it. Okay, I just want to put that out into the universe as a potential outcome.
And then I just also want to make sure that I'm clear that does the board want to do simultaneously an AG's opinion and the legislation? I thought we were just doing the legislation since the board had an idea of exactly what it wants to see happen.
You know, my understanding of the motion that was on the floor was specifically related to legislation and
Right.
the AG opinion.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The other issue before us is the poverty index. As we know that poverty is included in the funding formulas for school districts, and the Kirwan Commission decided that we probably should go back to collecting free and reduced price meal forms, which is we haven't collected since, I don't know, many, many years ago, because we're a community eligibility provision district, which means everybody eats. So there's not an incentive for parents to complete the forms because their child will eat. So what we wanted to do was and we pushed through the blueprint legislation, advocated and was successful in having MSDE look at another way to count poverty. And they did a report it was called the American Community Survey. And by using those factors, it has a more accurate measure of socioeconomic status. So it looks at things like demographics, household income, education, employment, home ownership, and is administered annually. MSDE found that that's something or those factors were the best indicators for poverty, and it can avoid the over and under counting. So I would suggest and recommend that the board push to see that we can modify how we calculate poverty in the state by using this neighborhood indicators of poverty. And ideally, we would like to have it for the 2024 budget. If not, if it's because, again, we have a transition year and it's going to be a lot of different things within the budget and the incoming governor's first budget, that maybe if they can't modify the entire funding formula for education, that they use some sort of pilot program that we would be part of to use those neighborhood indicators of poverty for funding. Next is students and staff. This is trauma-informed care was something that I think almost every organization that I spoke to and every individual that I spoke to had concerns about having increased funding. Recruitment and retention of staff. You know, there's a nationwide shortage trying to find innovative ways to recruit and retain staff. One area are pre-K paraeducator requirements. The blueprint requires that by the 2026 school year, the pre-K paraeducators would have to have a CDA, which is a Child Development Associate Certificate. And we found that believe it's 75% of our paraeducators in pre-K would not meet that standard, but yet they all have, but many of them have over 20 years worth of experience. So I think we would like to, or I would suggest that we seek an alternative approach to certification for our pre-K paraeducators this session, so that they can will not lose their jobs because they don't have this certificate. School safety clearly is a huge issue. Additional funding, innovative programs, and cybersecurity. I put that on there because this is something that's going to be with us for many years to come. Last year, we had legislation that passed that required local boards and local governments to have cybersecurity plans that met state criteria. And I think there's going to be even more issues around cybersecurity this session. And so with that, I would like to seek the adoption of the 2023 legislative platform. And if there's any questions, I'm open to comments and questions.
Thank you, Dewana. Are there any additional questions from board commissioners? Commissioner Katz-Ogby.
Yeah, I had a question regarding the specifics of SB 157. What was the rationality behind the specific provisions regarding the student commissioner not voting on collective bargaining, or sorry, the other one doesn't come to my mind, but
personnel.
why were those, and personnel, why were those two things specifically chosen as the things that student commissioners cannot vote on versus other board members?
One, it's collective bargaining and personnel. They felt that it was the student commissioner would be more susceptible to having people be involved in and lobbying him or her for issues related to collective bargaining. As well as personnel, you have some commissioners student commissioners may be working with teachers or some of the staff, and so they felt that there should be some sort of separation.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted some clarification as like what was separating that from other possible things that might be a conflict of interest, but thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Coy.
Donna, if you could speak for a second to some of the cybersecurity, I'm just wanting to understand a little bit more. I know school systems nationally and also right here in Baltimore have been targets of various cybersecurity sort of attacks and denial of service and other things. Is the legislation looking to I guess add more funding to support the defense of those, or more requirements on, you know, on what, like a little bit of clarity there would be appreciated.
Actually, right now, it's only requirements. For example, like I said, last year, we had to meet state standards. I think they want to standardize a lot of the cybersecurity across the state to try and avoid having some of the issues that we've seen over the last several years. But right now, I have not seen anything with funding. But of course, part of the platform is we don't want unfunded mandates. So if there's a requirement to increase cybersecurity, increase our technological infrastructure, we would definitely request that there be funding attached to it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It would just underscore that point.
Is that it? Is there a motion to adopt the 2023 legislative platform?
So moved, Richardson.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. Is there a second?
Second, Roberts.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. All in favor? Commissioner Chinya,
Yes.
Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Katz-Oxby,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, Chair Richardson.
Yes.
I'm in favor. That is 8 in favor with 2 absent. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Is staff ready to, you're welcome. Thank you, Dewana. Is staff ready to answer Commissioner Coy's questions around procurement item 12.03 and 12.04? Commissioner Coy, if you don't mind just elevating some more of your thoughts around it so that staff can be prepared to just answer your questions.
Yes, no, absolutely. You know, as we've been talking about the implementation of Kerwin or Maryland Blueprint for Education, it emphasizes career technical education, the need for certification or apprenticeship, and the requirement at the state level is that 45% of graduating seniors have either of those. I know here in Baltimore City, well, I believe the number I've heard is 34% of our students currently would be meeting those qualifications. We are, I think, outpacing some of the other districts across the state that have even more room to grow in that regard. And as I saw these items on the procurement, you know, one of them relates to industry certification testing, and just wanted to elevate the importance of this work, elevate the good hard work that is going into this right now. Earlier today, I had the opportunity actually to attend Career Success Academy's career fair, and it was wonderful to see the different pathways that existed there. So I think my question here is more of an opportunity to elevate the importance of this than on the specific procurement item, but wanting to give you all a chance to speak to some of the great work that you're doing in this regard. You're muted still.
Mr. Vines, we can't hear.
All right. Is that better?
Here you go. We can hear you. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, good evening, commissioners, Madam CEO, and all in attendance to the meeting. My name is Kumasi Vines. I'm Director of Career Readiness for City Schools. And under our purview, of course, are our CTE programming and our work-based learning team. And Commissioner Coy, if it's okay with you, can I address both of those items with these comments at the same time?
Yep. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Great. So Commissioner Coy, he's referring to two parts of specifically the two parts, I think, of the Maryland Blueprint item or section 3.42, which talks to having 45% of high school students earning either a industry recognized credential or completing a high school level of a registered apprenticeship by the year 2030-31 or school year 2030-31. And then also 3.4.4, which speaks to the LEAs offering a robust set of CTE programs that allow students to earn the industry recognized credentials or post-secondary certificate or complete a high school level registered apprenticeship. And I think overall, when we developed and rolled out our career readiness strategic plan, the re-envisioning of our CTE programming had the goal of increasing the opportunities for high wage, high skilled, and in-demand jobs. And a major component of doing that is enhancing our students' skills through robust in-class instruction and increased opportunities for the hands-on experiences that will lead to our students to obtain their industry recognized certifications in our CTE programs. So the plan was developed before the blueprint was fully rolled out, but what it allows us is the opportunity to get a head start towards that direction of making sure that we're meeting that goal. The NCS Pearson, formerly known as Certiport, see the direct connection there for the 3.4.2 part of the blueprint, referring to the industry recognized credentials or the apprenticeship. Because as Commissioner Coy said, this is the platform that we use for our students to take their certification exams, for students to access practice exams for their cert tests and other prep materials, and for our teachers to review and use the data from those practice exams as a diagnostic tool in order to see where the students may need additional support as they help them along the pathway of successfully obtaining their industry certification in their CTE pathways. And the primary pathways that we use NC Pearson are our business pathways, arts, media, and communication, and our Autodesk. And the industry recognized certifications are, as example, the Adobe Certified Associate. So, students learn about the entire Adobe suite, Microsoft Office Specialist, where our students obtain all the skills and certifications in this Microsoft Office suite, and Autodesk, even though we're thinking about switching that a little bit, but Autodesk, which is connected to our construction design and manufacturing pathways. And of course, NCS Pearson is an approved vendor. So having our students having access to the tools, the practice exams, through formerly known as Certiport, that platform, is one of the ways we are creating opportunities for our students to obtain that industry recognized certification, and therefore pushing us towards that goal of the 45% having a credential or their apprenticeship by the year 2030-31, school year 2030-31. For PLTW, that I see that as really directly connected to the 3.4.4, related to providing a robust CTE programming for our students. So PLTW at the high school level is pre-engineering and biomedical sciences. And it's a PLTW program is nationally recognized for their curriculum, recognized by many accredited engineering programs at post-secondary institutions. And so when our students successfully complete the PLTW program, whether they're applying for local colleges or abroad, it's highly recognized for our students that want to move on to study engineering. Or it just really, I think, gives the college admissions folks a sense that the students are really prepared. All of the courses in our PLTW program are honors. So just by the rigor and robust programming that goes into PLTW, even if our students don't choose, so they have an option of obtaining college credits based on those because of the honors level. And even if they don't choose to transfer those credits for college credits, just that technical skills in those engineering classes that they're getting and the reinforcement in math, it really helps prepare them for success in college. And linking this back to our career readiness strategic plan, we reviewed all of our programming, including PLTW, with various stakeholders, from teachers to post-secondary institutions, industry folks, so of course, students and families across 100 stakeholder meetings. And since our objective with the plan was to create opportunities or increase the number of opportunities for our students to obtain high skill, high wage, and in-demand careers, we found that the PLTW programming provides that preparation for our students if they need to be successful. And then when we directly connect that with the job market projections we looked at for the plan, we looked at the local, region, and state job projections through 2026. And of course, STEM-related it was tremendous job growth and opportunities for STEM-related fields, and the opportunities for our students to make above living wage so they can take care of themselves and their families. So that the whole process of us developing our strategic plan was to ensure that we are providing robust CTE programming, and this PLTW is just an example of that, and one of the many reasons we want to continue to work with them. And again, that's directly connected to 3.4.4 of the blueprint about providing robust CTE programs for our students.
I appreciate that overview and the work that is going on already here in City Schools. So thank you for the comments here and for the hard work that goes in day out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kamasi. I want to go back to item 8.05 to ensure that our student commissioner votes on that. Is there a motion to approve item 8.05?
So move,
Thank,
Roberts.
thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Is there a second?
Second, Sally.
Thank you, Commissioner Sally. All in favor, Commissioner Chinya,
Yes.
Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Katzogby,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
Chair Richardson.
Yes.
I'm in favor. That motion passes 8 in favor with 2 absent. Is there a motion to approve the remaining items of the consent agenda?
So moved, Richardson.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. Is there a second?
A second, Sally.
Thank you, Commissioner Sally. All in favor, Commissioner Chinya,
Yes.
Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Richardson,
Yes.
and I'm in favor. That motion passes with 7 in favor and 2 absent. We will now hear presentation, item 9.01, information and discussion around the 3R comprehensive update, including a presentation and discussion of our district goals.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair McFadden, and good evening, Commissioners, Dr. Santelises, colleagues, and other members of the public. My name is Teresa Jones, and I serve the district as the Chief Achievement and Accountability Officer. And this evening, I'm joined by Dr. Tracy Durant, our Executive Director of Equity. We will use this time this evening to provide some updates around the work related to the district goals. Also to provide some updates around the progress of the work of the board's Strategic Planning Committee, which has been tasked to really lead this on behalf of the district. Before we get started with the staff portion of the updates, I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Sally, who is serving as the chair of the committee, for some initial comments.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much, Chief Jones. One of the things that we want to highlight this evening as we begin this work is ways in which our public can really engage with this work, and thinking about 2 really important opportunities. So one as a look for in this presentation today, and the ways in which the concept of equity is woven throughout the presentation in terms of the strategy and goals, our development of pipelines, partnerships, and more. And so we welcome feedback and other comments in that respect. And secondarily is we'd like for the public and my fellow board colleagues to consider what each of our stakeholders may experience as a result of the board's focus on principal leadership now and as the work continues to progress. I will turn it back over to Chief Jones to take us through.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Sally. Let's move to the next slide, please. So by way of background, first I want to acknowledge the work of the board to identify and approve 3 district goals. Those are listed on the left side of this slide. So those are centered around wellness, looking at how students are feeling about the level of support that they're receiving in their school environments and their learning. Secondly, around student reading on grade level. So that's our literacy goal. And then thirdly, there's a goal around graduation, looking at having more students graduating within 4 years, ensuring that they are prepared to succeed in higher education or a career. Those goals are aligned to the board's strategic priorities, as noted on the right side of the slide. The one thing we wanted to also acknowledge for tonight's presentation is that we're going to provide a bit of an update around one of the goal areas that we postponed the board's adoption of a goal for, which is the staff leadership goal. And we want to talk through where we are with some related bodies of work that may inform the establishment of a goal as a 4th district goal. And then we also want to acknowledge that there is some exploratory work that we would like to embark upon at the request of the board around mathematics. And so I lift that up here, partly because when the goals were adopted, they were intended to align to the blueprint. And at the time, the blueprint did not technically have a mathematics goal included. There is some ongoing work as we speak, where we are realigning some of our strategic efforts. And so mathematics will certainly be considered as we work through that. And we'd like to have there be a level of alignment between the work of staff and the work of the district in terms of the district goals. That would be perhaps more inclusive of mathematics. So we wanted to put that forward this evening to make the board aware of that particular request that was brought forward through the Strategic Planning Committee of the board. Next slide, please. In terms of the goals themselves, again, we just want to note that this particular presentation is intended to be a bit of an introduction prior to the update around our 3R plan, which is our Restore, Reconnect, Reimagine plan. What we want to acknowledge is that when the goals were adopted, it was intended to be supported by the strategic work of the district, which includes 2 key documents, the Blueprint for Success, as well as the Restore, Reconnect, and Reimagine plans. As you all know, we will be transitioning into our regular way of doing business as the resources that were brought forth due to the pandemic in support of that Restore, Reconnect, and Reimagine plan start to sunset after fiscal year 24. So this is certainly an opportunity for us to sort of bring it all together in a new form of alignment, and that those 3 goals would be a part of how we would continue to measure progress and performance of the district. So again, those fall into the categories of student wholeness, literacy, and graduation. Next slide, please. One of the things we wanted to do this evening is just to provide a bit of an update around where we are in terms of measurement around these goals. So as we've previously communicated, the intent is that we do have the ability to provide regular updates around progress in these 3 areas. One of the things that we will note as we wrap up this evening is that due to some of the delays around receiving the data that we plan to use, we're not actually going to do a quantitative update this evening, but we will be bringing that forward in a future board meeting. Things we wanted to note here is that for student wholeness, the intent is that we will use our student survey to create what we call a student wholeness composite score. This was first introduced last year. We will continue to have that data available to us to measure an increase in positive responses on those survey questions that relate to student wholeness. When it comes to literacy, now that we will be back into the rhythm of using the state's assessment data, when that Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program, or MCAP, ELA, English Language Arts data is available to us, we will then be able to use it to take a look at the percentage of students that are reading at or above grade level. And then when it comes to graduation, we also will be anticipating here shortly the receipt of the state's 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate, which is a way of identifying the percentage of students who are able to graduate within the 4-year time period and to be considered college and career ready. So what we wanted to do here on the next slide is to actually provide a different approach to how we articulate the goals that are related to these 3 areas. And this was really important for the Strategic Planning Committee because there was some feedback received through the community presentations of the goals, where there were members of the public that may not have had a full understanding around where these numbers were coming from and what that meant. And what we wanted to do is to make sure that we were articulating the goals in a way that would help build an appreciation for our starting point. So the phrasing of the goals noted here takes the form of a SMART goal. And so it articulates very clearly what our starting point is and where we expect to be or are working to be by school year 2026 and 27. So when it comes to wholeness, the idea is that we would increase from 61%, which was the baseline from last year's first use of the wholeness composite score, to a goal of 80% by school year 26-27. When it comes to our English language arts and literacy performance on the state assessment, we wanted to note that our last administration, which was prior to the pandemic, we were at 19% when it comes to student proficiency. The intent here is that we will be increasing that to 40%. So that is a notable amount of growth. And so this is intended to be able to articulate progress or growth over time in significant and meaningful ways. And then thirdly, when it comes to graduation, looking to increase that graduation rate to what was slightly below 70% and trying to get that upwards to 76% by school year 26-27. So again, this slide was intended to respond in part to some of the feedback that we did receive in wanting to make the articulation of the goals numerically a lot clearer in providing context for the starting point of performance and the articulation of the goals. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to do this evening in recognition of the intent around having a goal that does align to the blueprint area around staff leadership is to provide Dr. Tracy Durant the opportunity to provide an update around a key body of work which is around equity-centered pipelines. And so as she provides this update this evening, she'll also provide some perspective around what this body of work looks like today and where it might lead us ultimately in our ability to identify a goal for the suite of district goals for the board to consider. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Durant.
Thank you, Chief Jones. Good evening, Dr. Santelises, Chair Richardson, Vice Chair McFadden, commissioners, and members of the public. In previous presentations, we provided an overview of the Equity Center Pipeline Initiative. Our discussion this evening is related to the staff leadership goal that Chief Jones mentioned is going to specifically focus on the work of ECPI. Next slide, please, Mark. And so for reminder, this is a 5-year grant that we were awarded by the Wallace Foundation. The guiding question is before you on the screen, so I won't read it to you, but we'll add that our work is heavily focused on defining our own principal pipeline and developing the necessary structures that will allow us to, at the highest level, grow, recruit, and support effective equity-centered leaders that will help us achieve our goals and shift our outcomes for students. So this work around ECPI is really about that alignment and how we support the district's ecosystem in achieving that goal. Next slide, please, Mark. As a reminder, this work is supported by what we call a district partnership team. That team is made up of members of the city schools team to include our partners in the Office of Achievement and Accountability, as well as the Educator Pipelines team that now sits as part of the Office of Equity, our partners at the Maryland State Department of Education, Morgan, and Towson University. This district partnership team has really allowed us to leverage our best thinking and the work that is already being done by these respective entities. We have a dedicated director and manager to support and lift this work. And the state partners, for example, are making sure that our initiatives are aligned to what our leaders are going to have to be produced based on certification, Admin 1, Admin 2, as well as the work that our university partners are doing with regard to courses, certificates, and redesign of their own preparation programs. Next slide, please, Mark. So these are the 7 domains identified as part of the work that we will be integrating into our pipeline development program, which includes our explicit definition of what it means to lead for equity, this alignment from the principal preparation period to the definition of what an equity-centered leader is, making sure that the framework that we have in place for evaluation and support actually supports the work of principals, how we support principal supervisors in their ability to coach and mentor those that they are providing leadership to, the development of a leader tracking system, which will allow us to leverage the structures that we already have in central office, but across the organization to include input from central office individuals, as well as our principals and those in the pipeline and aspiring to be principals, so that we can effectively select and recruit them, and then how we are sustaining the work that we are doing as an organization. Next slide, please. So we are in year 2 of our Wallace grant. So we have 3 years after the one that we are currently in. Our year 2 goals, again, are before you on the screen, so I will not read them. I just want to highlight a few things. So it is important for everyone to understand that we are working aggressively to ensure that our pipeline development, as well as the selection, development, recruitment of our aspiring leaders, the support, coaching, and mentoring and evaluation that we're offering to sitting principals actually increases their ability to do the very critical work, as noted by our CEO earlier this evening, of leading in our district. That work that is part of the Equity Centered Pipeline Initiative will help us to appropriately define what the leadership goal needs to be. One of the things that we did as early on as part of the development of the grant application and year 1 and entering year 2 of ECPI has really been about engaging the feedback of those stakeholders who are central to what we're asking to do related to this grant and this initiative. So we've spent time doing a landscape analysis with our principals, which has yielded us tremendous information about our pipeline, about the gaps in the pipeline, and about what principals actually need in order to be able to lead in their buildings, be that instructional leadership, culture, climate, to actually shift outcomes and help us to achieve our equity goals. And so what we are planning to do in the remainder of this year, as we build out these leader standards, as we figure out the preparation, as we figure out the selective hiring placement, and more importantly, what we've heard from principals loud and clear has been there are very technical aspects of leading a building, of running a school, of providing the proper support to the staff that they help support. In addition to that, there is work that is necessary in terms of their own development. And so we are working as a team collaboratively in our district partnership team to elevate those things so that the goal that we put forward related to staff leadership, but specifically around principal pipeline, will be satisfactory to the board and will help us achieve all of our district goals. Chief Jones.
Thank you very much, Dr. Durant. If we can move to the next slide. So what we wanted to do then is to certainly cover off where are we now relative to the timeline so that we are clear on the expectations for additional updates, as well as when some of the additional data would be available to us. So as I indicated earlier, due to some of the delays around the MCAP data in particular, what we're going to look to do is to provide an update a little bit later than planned. So we're anticipating receipt of the data that we would need both for the MCAP as well as for the four-year graduation rate in January, February. When it comes to the work over the next few months, we'll continue to work through the strategic planning committee around how do we again continue forward with the Wallace work and then get to a place of ultimately having some type of a goal. It's unclear whether or not that's going to happen by virtue of where we are with the year 2 work. So that might be something that we'll continue to provide updates on just so that we don't lose any momentum around it. But the quantification of that is something that we want to be mindful of, needs to be driven by the work itself versus sort of like coming up with something that might not be that well suited for what we need to accomplish. In addition to that, the work around math, as I indicated before, is also connected to some of the realignment work that we are doing around our district strategies. Also, I wanted to make note of this idea of providing an update that also includes the work around stakeholder engagement. So again, we recognize the importance of being able to have folks understand what this means and to use the goals themselves to motivate and rally our community in partnership around how we can achieve these goals. And so with the realignment work around our strategies, we want to bring that forward in an update somewhere around March. We think we'll be ready for that then. And then in terms of our overall annual update, we do have plans for a May 23rd public board meeting update, just around where we are in totality around all of this work related to the district goals and what that means in preparation for next school year. So we wanted to open the floor now if there are any comments or questions for Dr. Durant or myself before we turn it over to our colleagues for the 3R comprehensive update, which will give you a sense around all of the work that is transpiring that continues to move us towards the achievement of the goals that the board has adopted. At this time, Mark, if you can turn to the next slide, we will turn it over to the board for comments or questions.
Thank you, Chief Jones and Dr. Durant. I see Commissioner Coy's hand. Does any other commissioner have any questions? Commissioner Coy?
Yeah, I'd like to just celebrate the work that you all have been doing here, especially in the equity space. Dr. Durant, I think you have just created something that has been already replicated across the state here and have been doing this hard work. And really a model, and also Dr. Santelises, the way that you have elevated this work into the cabinet and cutting across the district, I think is so incredibly important. And I'm thinking about the ways that has made such an impact in other areas. You can only do that with very few things. There's certain things that do cut across in that way. And I'm reminded of, some of the various conversations from earlier with legislative items, and thinking, about how this model can help sort of identify ways to have important work that cuts across. But thank you for the hard work that you've been doing for years on this, and just want to shout out to City Schools for leading on this work and make sure it's getting the recognition for that. That's not just passed over, because there's so many other things to also be working on.
Thank you, Commissioner Coy.
Thank you to the team. Thank you for your thoughtfulness with this work and with the presentation. We appreciate it. We can move forward, Chief Jones, to the next portion of tonight's presentation.
Great, thank you so much. Chief Hike-Hubbard, I will turn it over to you.
I am here.
And
Happy
Happy New Year to Dr. Durant. Chief Jones, I think we've seen you in meetings virtually, but Dr. Durant, I think this is the first time we've seen you in 23. So Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you as well. Thank you.
So good evening, Commissioners. This is Tina Hike-Hubbard, Chief of Communications, Engagement, and Enrollment. I am here tonight with Chief Joan Dabrowski, Chief of Academics, and Chief of Schools John Davis to give you our 3R, or our Reconnect, Restore, Reimagine update for this January update. So we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you, John. So today in the presentation overview, we're going to go through framing and stakeholder engagement, which are my parts, and then the plan updates will be presented by Chief Dabrowski and Chief Davis. We'll go to the next slide, please. So we're going to go to the framing. As you know, this is some familiar slide for everyone. We have our 3 areas of preconditions, our overarching commitments, and our key strategies, which we're going to update you on today. We can go to the next slide, please. As a reminder, we have the board priorities that the preconditions, the overarching commitments, and the key strategies are aligned clearly here with all of the board priorities, so that there's a clearly connection between the work we're doing and the strategic priorities of the board. Next slide, please. So for this slide, we want to talk briefly about the grant fund supporting our recovery plan. Understanding that the funding that we have to support this plan is actually braided together from multiple sources, including our ESSER 2 grant, our ARP or ESSER 3 grant, our state COVID relief grants for summer school tutoring, school reopening, and trauma and behavioral health, our new Kerwin concentrations of poverty per pupil grant, and title grant funds, specifically Title I and Title IV. We want to make sure that we know these components are managed centrally, as well as grants or funds going directly to schools, that our charges are provided with their equitable share of funds directly, and we're carefully monitoring our implementation and making adjustments with the grant funding. Next slide, please. Here's a quick snapshot on this slide of how the spending is going for these grants. So for ESSER 1, our first ESSER grant, you can see it's 100% spent and encumbered. Our ESSER 2 grant is 81%, 0.5% spent and encumbered. And then our ARP ESSER or ESSER 3 grant is 13% spent. This is as of 9/30/24. I want to remind folks that we spend the earliest money first. So the earliest money received has been fully spent and accounted for, and then we're spending our other dollars as they come in appropriately. And we have until 9/30/24 to spend the rest of the ARP ESSER $3. So we are clearly on track to spend that money in a timely fashion. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into stakeholder engagement briefly. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Jonathan. So how are we using our stakeholder input and feedback? You've seen this slide before. I'm not going to read it to you, but just to highlight that we make sure that we are listening to our stakeholders, including our teachers, our principals and school-based staff, our students and families, our central office staff, et cetera, to really inform how our R3 plan work is going, how they're feeling about the work, supporting alignment to priorities, reflecting on current practice, and making sure we're doing improvements and listening to new ideas on our initial approaches. Next slide, please. So here's just an example or a schedule of our stakeholder engagement for 22-23. As you can see in 22, we've had those meetings with the board. Then in 23, we have the following schedule. We're doing regular updates on pieces of our comprehensive R3 plan. So while you won't hear all of this today, there are opportunities throughout the year for folks to get an update on where we are with our spending with R3. I also want to make sure that people understand we're working on our lessons learned or best practice from our stakeholder engagement experiences. We want to mitigate our stakeholder survey fatigue. We heard that a lot last year, that we're doing multiple surveys. So this year we've moved to just the end of the year survey. Again, I presented on that survey in August of this year, of 22, excuse me, but that data is still on our website if folks want to go back and look at our end of the year data from last year. And we are preparing for our end of the year surveys for this year. We are continuing our ongoing discussions or using quarterly polls or pulse checks to inform timely district decisions. We're leveraging discussions, feedback, and polls as schedules, meetings, professional development sessions, and events to make sure we're getting input. And our desired outcomes for our stakeholder feedback is to have consistent and scheduled feedback discussions in a more meaningful peer setting, timely results in next steps communications to make sure that people understand we heard you and you can see it implemented, and fostering greater stakeholder collaboration and deeper discussions. Next slide, please. So now we're going to go into plan updates. I'm going to cover the preconditions here. So we can go on to the next slide, please. So our first precondition I'm covering is our health and safety COVID response. I want to just celebrate the fact that Cleo Hirsch, our former ED for COVID response, as well as her team, created a robust but adaptable program that has evolved to meet and exceed our CDC requirements for our COVID response, but also providing a top-notch service to our students and families at city schools. The COVID response team has secured $9.5 million in reimbursement from FEMA, with another $18.8 million submitted for future reimbursement. Additional reimbursements are also being processed for submission from the state of Maryland. The COVID response program has also evolved from a symptomatic testing model in which the symptomatic testing is conducted exclusively within our school health suites. And we're also working together to assist our HSCs to find other jobs and supports at city schools as we sort of ramp down our testing program. We're also giving home tests to our students when they go on breaks, for example, and also continue to do symptomatic testing where necessary. Next slide, please. I'm excited to report, I don't normally read a slide, but I think it's important here to highlight these numbers on the slide are on our facility improvements and upgrades. 18 health suites, 19 restrooms renovated, 10 in construction and 23 in design, $9.6 million for critical HVAC repairs, and $31.4 million for HVAC capital projects is significantly a significant accomplishment as part of our 3R work, and also an excellent use of our funds to make sure we are providing the right facilities for our students and our faculty. Next slide, please. Under connectivity and technology supports. Okay, here we go. I just want to quickly highlight the three areas: connectivity, technology, and our systems. Just to highlight a couple of things, we had over 15,000 hotspots provided for our students, and making sure that we're getting devices in the hands of our students to ensure they have at-home connectivity and enhancing the administrative and educational technology systems that schools use. We continue enhancing our network access in schools by increasing the network bandwidth at schools by a factor of 10. We've also continued to enhance integrate our application systems to support such things as our VLP program. Next slide, please. Our overarching commitments for the district is next. Under youth engagement, as you heard our wonderful student lead of our ASCBC, Ethan, in the beginning of the year, we have launched a stronger, robust program this school year for ASCBC and SGAs, or school government associations. We've grown from 21 to 45 SGA advisors, which is really exciting. We had an election with ASCBC where we had an increased voter turnout by 10 times the normal turnout. We've also had our first General Assembly meetings, and we have some scheduled on February 6th and the May date to come. And we had our students participate in the Maryland Association of Student Councils. 8 students attended last fall's leadership conference. We are also rolling out our Youth Ambassador program. We launched Cohort 2 with Cohort 3 on the way. And we're also launching our CEO Youth Leadership Advisory Council with applications out now. And we're hoping to have the launch scheduled for February of 2023. Next slide, please. We're also focused on our family engagement as an overarching commitment. You know, our parent cafe strategy we've highlighted before as a way that we're focusing on parent wellness, as wellness is a key component of our district's blueprint strategy. We've trained over 80 schools, as more schools are going to come on board in this month and in the month of March. We are adding our school family council, strengthening, having a toolkit created, building capacity of our schools to have support our school family community councils, having bi-monthly learning opportunities, providing guidance for councils and support. We're very excited to say that the majority of our schools now have the councils on record, and we're providing training and support to both our schools and our council members. For our FACE advisory has been fantastic of helping us shape and implement the KCA policy for family engagement as a key focus area. And finally, our FACE Fellowship, which I'm very proud about. We've had 44 school teams participate in our intensive FACE Fellowship, or our Family and Community Engagement Fellowship, where they're getting cohort training with school-based teams on family and community engagement to create plans and stronger practice at the school level. Next slide, please. And the last area of overarching commitments are professional learning for teachers and leaders. As you can see, we've hosted summer institutes, summer professional development days for our teachers and school-based staff. And for school leaders, we've had Summer Institute, and then several leadership institutes from October, January, March, May, and then June. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Dabrowski to begin talking about our key strategies.
Thank you so much, Chief Hike Hubbard. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joan Dabrowski, Chief Academic Officer. So as we go into our key strategies, let me go on to the next slide here and just walk you through just sort of the overarching way we think about these key strategies. Each of those columns sort of represents the collective work that we've been focusing on as we continue to just navigate this work through that lens of R3. So the wellness in our schools, acceleration, personalized learning, reimagining time and expanding opportunities, and how we use those things in service of really thinking specifically about students as whole people, using our student learning plan. So that SLP is really representing our commitment that every student has a plan, sort of their roadmap for how we support them. And at the base of that graphic, you see our commitment to professional learning and wellness for all of our stakeholders. If we go to the next slide, I just want to highlight that as we think through tonight's presentation, we're mindful that we've had multiple opportunities in the Teaching and Learning Committee, which I will just say is the best committee of our board, because when we come together, we are able to really dig into some of these.
Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden.
Chief, don't do that.
Just bringing some lightness to our conversation here this evening. But truly, when we come together at those committee meetings, not only do we get to talk through some of the high-level work, but we bring in our school voices. We bring in our teachers, our students, our school leaders to see how that work is coming alive. And so again, I would offer folks to go back and look at these presentations to get a chance to see how we've really gone into further detail. And I will not go into some of these details tonight, given we have had so many wonderful opportunities at that Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. All right, let's keep going. At this point, I'm going to ask my colleague, Chief John Davis, to come up and get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Dabrowski. Good evening, everyone. John Davis, Chief of Schools, and let's go on with wellness, culture, and climate. Two things I want to point out with our culture and climate work. If you go back about 3 hours to the very first presentation, the new ed specialist around bullying prevention was discussed. He's had a good impact on schools. I just want to call him out again, Mr. Perkins. But we've also done work in school climate and culture, specifically around school-wide classroom norms and routines this year, and also supportive behavior approaches. For each of the last 2 years, we picked a couple of areas of focus. We always start the year with creating plans, and then during the year, we give schools feedback on those plans, and then as they have to adjust during the year. Let's keep going. Additionally, some of our SEL work really has been focused in the morning meetings and advisories. This is becoming a staple across schools. Again, for the last couple of years, we have ramped this up. You can see the number of educators that have gone to PD sessions. But I really want to point out that schools have been able to use the advisory sessions as needed when situations happen in schools. So we've seen them utilized here recently in difficult times, but quite honestly, they get right into SEL, they get right into college and career readiness. There's a number of topics that all students need to be a part of, and they're becoming a really strong staple in our schools. Let's keep going. Around wellness and mental health, the point that I would really want to bring out is our main commitment has been ensuring that students and families know their mental and counseling staff. So the initial start of the year, really promotion and publicizing who those are so that students know exactly who they need to go to, has really been a part of our student wellness support teams that have also blossomed in the last couple of years. Another aspect I would want to call out here is in that last point, we have our expanded school behavior health clinicians in a lot of schools. And not only do they have direct service with students, but as we have shortages across the nation, we have made sure that that those clinicians also do staff in-service trainings just to make sure some of the best practices can be utilized by teachers as well. And that's a point that's often lost. Let's keep going. And then there's also staff wellness. One of the things that we heard last year, and I think we're going to continue to figure out how we incorporate, is sometimes we have half days and we have professional development in the afternoons, but teachers have asked, can we just have the half days to catch up on our work? Because there's always not a lot of free time for teachers, and we know that. So you can see those embedded in different ways for those 3 days, and the first one is really coming up tomorrow. I'm going to lead us into the expanded enrichment and academic opportunities by talking about athletics first. And really what we did is we launched an expansion of our elementary and middle school athletics. You can see the number, or excuse me, the types of sessions and the sports that were involved in our first couple of sessions. You can also see over 500 students in grades 3 through 8 participated in district coordinated activities. We plan to do even more next year, and I'm kind of just giving that as a little bit of a preview, especially on the middle school end. So we've done good work this year in this expansion, but we think that we can do more in the middle school area, and so please stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Dabrowski as we get into some of the additional academic opportunities.
Thanks so much, Chief Davis. So again, fine arts expansion, we had an opportunity to update our teaching and learning committee on November 1st. So I'll just say here, what's really excited as we continue our commitment to ensure that all of our students have access to fine arts. We're making great progress and we have more work to do. So you'll see that at this point, 90% of our students do have access to visual art instruction, 68% of students have access to general music. We want that number to grow. We continue to work on making sure we've got a pipeline for our recruiting and hiring of fine arts teachers. We are investing in our schools with materials and resources in service of fine arts. Our team grew. We were able to bring in more positions into our fine arts office. We're revising curriculum. So again, we've got some really robust partnerships with Arts Every Day. Again, just to really lift up this commitment. Go to the next slide, please. So our dual language initiative, we know that our English learners is one of the most, if not the most, rapidly growing population of our students. And so we have been working with our English learner team to really ensure that we have opportunities to really support multilingual learners in this space of emergent bilingual students. And so we've been doing some important planning work to establish this sort of program design and really doing some intentional and schools and family outreach to bring on this type of program. So we're in the earlier stages of this work. You can see the timeline of where we've been and where we're going. And again, very intentional work growing this small. This is a very ambitious body of work to really bring in dual language into a school community. So there's, again, lots of planning with particular schools where we know that we can grow this model and to really have a methodology around how we plan and train over the upcoming school years. Go to the next slide, please. So something we're really excited about is our work around dual enrollment. So you can see here, we have just made tremendous progress in the number of students who can access this experience of taking a course. And you'll see here that as you look at where we were last year in 21-22 at 416 students, we've nearly doubled. We're at 827. That's super exciting. And then if you look at the graph at the bottom, you'll see that as we think about where those students reside in sort of their high school career, that number really does grow as students progress into high school. So those opportunities for them to be able to take courses and have that dual enrollment is something that we're really proud of. Next slide, please. Similar, our advanced placement AP expansion. Again, we've got some great highlights to share here. This past summer, we were able to train 85 teachers from 22 different schools. We also had 44 of our teachers complete pre-AP training. So again, trying to build sort of that pipeline and build that muscle for our students to be successful in advanced placement courses. So again, building our staff capacity and having that formal training is just, one of the most important first steps. And then as we look at this year, we're super excited that at Poly, we are actually one of only 60 schools in the country that is piloting an AP African American history course. So we're really excited about that. And you can see our pre-AP sites have expanded. We're now in 11 schools with more than 180 sections of a range of that pre-AP. Again, sort of that building that readiness so that students can get into those AP classes and have success. On the next slide, you'll see a bit of sort of this where we've been in that journey over the last 5 years, and you can see, or 6 years rather, you can see we've really made tremendous growth and progress. And when you look across districts across the nation who are making this commitment, Baltimore City stands out as a real sort of leader in this space of how we're ensuring that more students in our urban schools are having access to AP. So this is something we're super proud of as well. All right, let's keep going. So algebra expansion, you've heard me talk about this in previous meetings, and it is a continual space for us that we are trying to use our virtual teaching space as a place to help that expansion. You can see that while we're growing, we sort of plateaued this year. So we know we need to focus on that. Staffing continues to be an area that we need to sort of pay attention to and trying to find that teacher who can do that virtual teaching instruction. Again, trying to increase the number of students by 8th grade who have that access. So we've sort of held steady there. And again, it's an area of focus for us. And go to the next slide, please. All right, so accelerated learning. If we go to the next slide, you've seen this graphic many times before. I'm not going to go into details here. We talked a lot about this at our December 6th Teaching and Learning Committee. But again, this continues to guide our work. This is an ambitious model. I know it looks nice and pretty on this slide, but there's a lot here about what it means to truly help students not make just a year's growth, but more than a year's growth, to accelerate that learning. And so this continues to inform how we think about our standards, how we think about our curriculum, how we think about assessments. So again, it really guides our work so that we can give students access to grade level instruction. Go to the next slide, please. So the high things to remember here is Baltimore City has done tremendous work on getting high quality instructional materials in our schools. So we've talked a lot about our new high school English curriculum. We know that we've already got in K-8 and in math, we've got strong materials there as well. We've been really prioritizing which sort of lessons and standards to focus on, and we've got really strong assessments. So again, this is just sort of the high level sort of space that we've been in around acceleration and what sort of helps drive that. So having these things in place is part of the story. The other part is on this next slide, which is our process. So again, we also highlighted this in December at our Teaching and Learning Committee. But in addition to sort of having those materials and assessments in place, we also have to have systems. So in that bottom part of the graphic where the gray boxes are, that's where we talk about our student learning plans, our commitment to tutoring, the adaptive learning platforms where students can go in and get just right lessons that are matching what the assessment data is showing about them, and then how we are really intentional with small group instruction. So again, there's a lot here. This is deep work, complex work, but this is, again, some of that commitment we've made in that space of personalized learning to help accelerate our student growth and achievement. So if we go to the next slide, the key things here, again, student learning plans, the tutoring work. Again, we talk a lot about the different adaptive platforms we have. I want to actually, though, talk a little bit about virtual learning. We have learned a lot over the last 3 years about where and how virtual learning can benefit students and where it can be very much a responsive strategy for what a student needs. So as you all may know and recall, that we really made that commitment to keep a virtual learning program in place for students in grades 3 through 12. That has been, again, a space where students learn completely in a virtual setting. And again, we're seeing really good results for the students who are in that program and who are really able to engage in teaching and learning experiences through that platform. But what we're also learning is that there are opportunities when students are in very special situations or unique situations that virtual learning helps. For example, if a student has a short-term illness where they need to be away from school, we have traditionally used sort of our home and hospital approach. We're learning that there are ways that virtual learning can also be a space for that student to learn very safely while they're perhaps managing a health issue. And again, we're trying to find ways that our virtual learning can support that particular student, which might be for a short period of time. We also know that there's an opportunity for us to think about virtual learning for all students as we think about an expansion of courses. So when we talk about AP, for example, or virtual algebra, when we have a virtual space for that, we can actually give more opportunities to more students because we're coming in that virtual space. So that's kind of a what's next for virtual learning, is how do we start to build out more, perhaps in areas like world languages, where we can perhaps find a French teacher who can actually offer sections of French across multiple school sites, again, utilizing that space of virtual instruction. So a lot of exciting things in that virtual learning space that, again, help us personalize learning for students. A quick update on the next slide about our student learning plans. This is, again, as of December, so we'll be looking to see where we are now here at the end of January on our completion rate. But at this point in time, we have got about 80% of our students who have an SLP in process. So a student learning plan, again, went through a lot of revisions. We're super excited. If you go to that December presentation, you'll learn about the ways we enhanced the technology, tried to make it much more user-friendly based on feedback that we heard. We've got 54% of students who it's fully completed. So again, we continue to really celebrate the work our teachers are doing. We have what's called a student learning plan ambassador in every school, who these folks do tremendous work to help really lift this initiative so that every student has that plan in place. And just another shout out for tutoring. We've talked about tutoring in a number of different presentations, but last year we were able to support over 10,000 students in 129 schools. We had over 13 programs. We invested over $17 million, again, in a very, very structured, research-based approach to what we think of this high dosage tutoring. And what's super exciting here is that as we're now looking at our data and submitting our report to the state about what we're noticing, some of our internal work, our own sort of organically homegrown tutoring program, is actually one of the strongest programs that we're seeing in terms of our results and the impact on students. So again, I'm just excited to see that how we are supporting this work and the impact we're starting to see as we're looking more and more at our data. All right, let's go to the next section, which is about Reimagine Time, talking about college and career readiness and extended and summer learning. If we go to the next slide here, again, we talked about this both in October and then just most recently last week at the teaching and learning update on summer learning and extended learning. So again, I just want to highlight we continue to expand opportunities for how our students will be on track to graduate. We've got different pieces in place for how we think about this in the middle grades. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you can see the different commitments we make in order to sort of set the stage for our young people as they're making those decisions. We think a lot about what we'd heard earlier about what's the work-based learning opportunities and how we think about our CTE programming, and certainly a huge shout out to the work that we're doing around credit earning and recovery opportunities. So how we think about credit recovery across the school year, an extended day. We're launching Saturday school this month, in fact. We've got evening school. So again, lots of ways to help our young people get the credits they need to be on track to graduate. We go to the next slide. Again, really excited about our extended learning work. We want to help get more programs into our schools to get to that 100% that every school's got an extended learning program. Again, offering flexible scheduling, that some schools want to do their programs before the school day, some want to do it after the day, some are looking at Saturday. So again, really excited about that. And as I mentioned already, that credit recovery commitment is something that we are continuing to get creative and innovative about how we use our time to help our students. And then finally, I'll end with this last slide about our summer 2023. Summer is coming. I know it's January, but we're already thinking about summer. We want to increase the number of school-based programs. We want to think more about different ways to have some mini camps where students can take things maybe for 2 weeks and then have another 2-week option. We got a lot of great feedback from our families and students that they like that. We're talking also about launch programs for how we might start the school year 23-24 sort of earlier in August for particular grade levels, just to sort of help jumpstart their learning. We're looking at different calendar options. We're trying to organize the registration process in ways that really help with some efficiencies for it. So again, and most important, like we're doing here tonight, communicating our plans earlier so that folks can make their decisions, get registered. And again, families I know want to know these things soon. And I think we're excited that we're going to be making those adjustments as we plan ahead. And I believe that is our conclusion, and I thank you for this opportunity, and we're hopefully ready to hear some questions and comments from our board.
Anyone? I see Commissioner Coy, but Chief Dabrowski, thank you all for this. I just remember as we were celebrating our board chair emeritus, Linda Chinya, we were mentioning the spring, right? The late winter or spring of 2020, when, you know, the pandemic hit and our lives shifted, all of our lives shifted as we know it. And that's similar also around the time when you came in and now you're really pushing our staff that we hear, you along with Chief Jones, all of our staff, all of our chiefs, to really reimagine what school is like, but to also fill in gaps that we noticed prior to the pandemic, and then certainly those that have been exacerbated. So I appreciate hearing these updates because it takes me back to that time when we were kind of really wondering what things were going to be like. And so it seems like we have a path moving forward. I just want to appreciate the work that you're leading and the work that most of the chiefs, all of the chiefs are kind of leading to make sure, and everyone else that's working in city schools to make sure that we're really moving forward. What should we be looking for with middle of the year data as a result of this presentation and the work that's happening? As school board commissioners who should be focused on student achievement, wholeness for our young people, increased graduation rates, our goals, all of those things, what should we be looking for specifically when we're hearing middle of the year updates as far as data is concerned, and our assessments, end of the year data that will be presented, and also our graduation graduation numbers as we're coming upon, you know, that season. What should we be looking for in that information, and how would you encourage us to continue to stay focused on this work?
So I'll start, and I certainly welcome other colleagues to join. I would start to say, if I reflect on where we were a year ago in January, So a year ago in January, if you recall, we were in the middle of a surge of the Omicron variant, and the energy at this time was so much around health and safety. And I feel as I have sort of been able to be out in schools this fall and into the early winter, the energy really feels more on the teaching and learning again. And it is so powerful to be out in schools and to see and feel that energy where there is a real focus and intentionality. And I think what we're seeing in our early data is this growth piece. We're seeing our students are making progress, and I would want to see more of that. I'm excited to see, we've just begun our middle of year assessments. I'm looking forward to see the gains. And so I think, as you saw earlier in the presentation, our district goals and our sub goals, specifically, I'll look at like literacy right now. We've got really clear sub goals that we look at in terms of some very specific measures in our DIBELS assessment. And we're going to be looking at laser-like focus to see, are we growing? And I think that's the space that I would encourage all of us to be accountable around, is how we're seeing the growth of our young people. I think when we think about that graduation piece, it's checking in to see how many students are in those credit recovery opportunities, our Saturday school enrollment, our extended learning programs in our schools, in service of that earned credit or that missed credit that needs to be recovered. And I think I use those as sort of measures of success and forward progress. We continue to see how our tutoring efforts, how many kids are we reaching? What's that attendance look like for tutoring? Because what we know is it's not that you just have a program in your building, it's also that you're monitoring that attendance of kids, making sure they get to those tutoring sessions, and that those sessions are all sort of being monitored and closely planned for and experienced. So I would offer that as ways to really be sort of pushing us to not sort of take the heat away. We need to keep pressing and pushing. And I'm also mindful of, this is steep work. It's steep work to be accelerating. So if you think about sort of the pacing of that, and I think you said it nicely, we always want to be thinking about our wellness and the well-being of our children. And right now, the energy around academics feels palpable for me when I'm out in schools. So I want to just keep that momentum going and keep us energized to do these things that we know are helping students.
I appreciate that. I think that is extremely helpful for us to stay focused on that and asking the right questions and being able to monitor in a way that really supports our goals as a board, but also supports staff in the work that you all are doing. And then it also, you know, as commissioners, it helps us as we're visiting schools and we're talking to families and we're in the stores or we're, you know, at the farmers, wherever we are within the city. It's important for us to be able to have these types of conversations with families to get that type of feedback as well that informs our work. So I just wanted to make sure that we raised, you know, what are those look fors? What are those things that can help us, you know, in the work that we're doing as governors as well? Commissioner Coy?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I had two questions, one of which actually relates very closely to what you were lifting up, Commissioner McFadden, and also as Commissioner Chinny is on our mind, and for, I guess, for the general public, as her term is ending, we've celebrated her earlier today. And I'm just thinking about her in her previous role as, I didn't know her at the time, but as Chief Academic Officer. So thinking about the legacy here that you are stepping into and doing the work of not only Commissioner Chinny, but also Dr. Santelises as well in the Chief Academic Office role. My question, though, relates to the goals around math literacy. And I know Chief Jones spoke about the work happening towards planning for this. I didn't see as much in what you presented here specific to math literacy, but also thinking about the data and what things we should be focusing in on and how to better understand the progress that we intend to make, knowing that it needs to be a focus, that we've identified that Commissioner Reed and others had lifted up. Dr. Santelises has talked about that. I know it's on your mind, and I know it takes a little while for the goals and the plans to be developed, implemented, and then the results of those to be seen. So I know there's a longer event horizon, but wanting to get some reaction or thoughts to math literacy as an area of needed focus.
Yep,
And then
no.
I'll have a question after that. But
Yeah, no, appreciate the question, and I appreciate you also just naming sort of the intentionality that it requires to be. I mean, we spent last year in teams sort of a full 6 to 8 months developing our literacy goals and sub goals. So I want to be careful not to come out of the gate with sort of a big idea around this without doing that thoughtful, intentional work to really study what is our data telling us. We know from all the different data sources that we've seen that math was actually a larger sort of interruption of learning for many of our students, more so than literacy. And so we are going to be excited to dig into this math issue. We know that what we have talked about with some of our math colleagues is the interrupted learning that happened even into the last school year with the different quarantines and things that happened. So much of math is sequential in nature. So if a young person is sort of in school for 5 days, all of a sudden has to go into quarantine and is out for 5 days or 10 days before or gets COVID. So some of that interruption, I think, really impacted some of the important sort of procedural pieces that happen, particularly in those early grades, those concrete operations that young people learn in first, second, and third grade. So I know that we're going to be having some goals really around that. I think the algebra access is another piece. And what does that pipeline look like for honors mathematics in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? So some of that work I know will be part of our goals, but I want to be cautious to say too much before, again, we do that thoughtful, intentional work. And we'll look forward to bringing that back to the board later this year, before the end of the school year, to bring that forward with our progress on where we're going to really land and what our measures will be.
Thank you for commenting on that. My other question relates to an item that you elevated, which is the high dosage tutoring. And my question is one of, is that in your mind a short-term investment from some of the COVID relief funds that are trying to bridge some of that, or is that long-term shift in long-term anticipated investment in that?
Sure, that's a great question. So while certainly our ESSER dollars have allowed us to really launch tutoring in a really robust way very quickly, I do see it as a long-term necessity, a long-term strategy. There is so much that we're learning over the last year and a half as we've been doing this work. I think it's going to be with us for a long time. And really and truly, maybe the numbers of students who need tutoring, my hope is those numbers will go down over time. But the way in which the research has now shown us that when we intentionally schedule it with a very specific guidance around how many kids in a group and how often they're seen and the type of materials that are being used, we get results. So I don't see that going away in the next year or so. I see a long runway for tutoring to continue on in our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that certainly is a part of our reimagining work, right? That those supports certainly help our students, pandemic, post, pre. So thank you for that. Commissioner Reed, I see your hand.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd like to thank the whole group for what you guys are doing in terms of the academic approach. First, Commissioner Jones, I think it's really important that we look at the English literacy and taking it from 19% to 40%. That's not just aspirational. I think you guys are going to make an effort to get there. The other thing is about graduation. 76% may not seem to be a lot, but it's tough to move that needle. And I really think that's important for all of us. The other thing in terms of Commissioner Dabrowski, I really like the whole idea of us focusing on Algebra 1, because that's probably the best barometer for a person going to college, the ability to make it to college. And we have 7,000 kids now. The more we increase that, but also I like for it to be diffused, because I know there are a few schools, a small group of schools that dominate that number. The more we can get that across the whole platform, the better. And lastly, tutoring. I guess Commissioner Coy talked about it a little bit, but I think tutoring is going to be really important for us to get the kids who's on the fringe and get them to succeed. So you guys did a great job. I just hope you can get it done. Thank you.
And I I'd like to encourage the board also to be mindful to when, because we've increased the amount of partnerships that we have with tutors and organizations and programs and things to support our young people, because we know, although our teachers, many of which are doing an incredible job in our classrooms, it takes that village, right, to really support how our students are able to move forward in the world and society in our city, and in order for us to meet our goals. So just be mindful of those as we continue to see those items come before us and those organizations, to really be laser focused on some of those things that Chief Dabrowski mentioned to us on what we should kind of be keeping our eyes on throughout the next several months a week. So are there any additional questions or thoughts? Commissioner Sally and our student commissioner.
Thank you so much. So one of the things I want to lift up is just getting us to think about, specifically related to the work around expanded time, reimagining time, is how we can continue to learn what's working in that space, replicating what's working in that space, infusing that across the district, not just in pockets, but throughout the entire district. So just something that's top of mind, because I think that works in concert with everything else in terms of our strategies, in terms of our focus on academics across the space. So that's my general comment.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kadzagbe.
Thank you. I had two questions, or one question, one statement. So I think that the first thing I would like to say is the statement is that I think that it's really incredible, all the work that you guys are doing towards kind of I don't want to say leveling the playing field, because I think that really the work that's being done is moving away from a ideology of equality of opportunity to a ideology of equity of outcome. And the idea that every student, no matter how they start out, has the opportunity to end in a place that is good and livable for them and will lead them to a career where they can feel secure, both financially and socially. And then the second thing I wanted to ask was regarding the student learning plans. As someone who's completed quite a few of these student learning plans in the past few years, I was wondering if we have done any studies into the efficacy of these student learning plans and the ways that they can be improved, because I think that, at least from my perspective as someone who's completed them, I've found that oftentimes in my very anecdotal experience, they've been kind of something that have been treated as sort of like a hassle, or something like, oh God, the district is making us fill out this questionnaire for the 5th time. And like, what ways can we improve these or make students more excited, or at least more understanding of their value?
Yep. No, appreciate the question and appreciate the comment too. I think one of the things that as we were bringing students back for in-person learning, to your point, we knew that we couldn't go out with a sort of a one-size-fits-all, because students had all gone through something during that time of being remote and away from in-person learning. And so the student learning plan really represented an opportunity to make sort of a real statement and commitment that every student deserves a plan for how they're going to make their way through that particular year ahead of them. And so we recognize that this is a big change for how we think about sort of starting the school year. And a student learning plan for every student is absolutely an ambitious initiative, very ambitious. And when we talk to colleagues in other cities across the states and such, when they say, you've got a plan for everybody, we say yes, but it's to your space around every student being able to sort of be heard, seen, and understood, and know sort of what their hopes and dreams are, and also what's hard for them. And so it's hard to sort of shift a system that hasn't traditionally done this type of approach. So what you're experiencing, I would imagine, is some of the growing pains when you're trying to bring in something that feels very different than how we've done things before. And how do we help make the experience feel genuine and feel valuable, and how do we help our students, our families, our teachers, everybody who has sort of a stake in that learning plan, find the value in it. And so we continue to listen to teachers, families, and students about what's working, what's not. One of the biggest things we heard last year was this is way too hard to do. This is clunky technology. This isn't, you know, there's stuff we got to type in here that should already be pre-populated. So we did some of that technical fix. But I think what you're lifting up is the hard work we need to do next, which is that deep adaptive work about how do these actually then become something that are meaningful. You don't just fill it out once, put it away, you know, click it into your saved box and then it's done. How do you come back to it and use it as a way of goal setting and reminding and such? And so we have more work to do on that. So I think you're asking the right question. We will continue. That's the student learning plan ambassadors. So the representatives in every school. We ask that they come together with us, give us this feedback, and we try to make improvements, and we'll continue to do that.
No, just thank you so much for your time and this very thorough overview of the work that you guys have been doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any additional questions from board colleagues? Thank you, staff, for the information, the presentation, and we look forward to the continued work in progress. And thank you for our charge again tonight, refocusing us on some things that we should be looking forward to. Notice of upcoming meetings. There will be a special work session for annual review. It will be a virtual meeting on this Thursday, January 12th from 7 to 9 p.m. The Operations Committee will meet virtually on Tuesday, January 17th at 10:30. The Policy Committee will meet the same day at 3:30. There will be an executive session of the board on Tuesday, the 24th of January at 3 o'clock in the third floor conference room. Then there will be a public board meeting that same evening at 5 o'clock. Work session for operator renewal will be on Thursday, January 26th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And the Teaching and Learning Committee will meet next month on the 7th of February at 3:30 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Commissioner Sally.
Thank you, Commissioner Sally. Is there a second?
Richardson.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. I'll take that. All in favor, just answer by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned this evening at 9:31. Have a great evening, everyone.